Chase Wolf wants to say film school. It wasn't Full Sail, was it? I'm going to point out it was Temple University out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Good for you.
I don't throw as much shade toward Full Sail as other people do. I think we need more trade schools.
Were you at Temple with Gabe Sapolsky by any
I
chance?
was not. I was class of 2010. He had been running Ring of Honor for probably 5 or 6 years by that point.
Speaking of Gabe Sapolsky.
There it is.
One of his titles is going to be one of our free Out of the Vault titles. So we have the Vault, which you can chip into there for $14.99 a month. And then we have the Out of the Vault every month for the free titles that we like to run here on YouTube. You guys love them. I am happy that you are more than welcome to just enjoy the cycling of the videos we do every month. It's totally cool. But if you want to rewatch and watch, and one thing that our viewers have always told me was the replayability, the rewatchability of our content is what made us different. Hopefully you guys still feel the same way. He was a good guest for us. We also gave him a series when he was doing when Evolve first started working with NXT. We had the benefit of knowing the guys that were going to be going to NXT. So right before they left and lost their freedom, we said, Gabe, let's do a series. You put them on. You review everything you did with them right before they get onto NXT television. And it was called Gabe Sapolsky's Next Evolution. I don't know why. Which was born when we were going to do a Ring of Honor centric series with Gabe. And Claire sent us a letter. And I'm glad they did, because it allowed us to rethink this and go, NXT starting. And it actually coincided with that, which gave us the idea to go, holy shit, we can have all the guys that are going to NXT on as their last thing before they go. So it worked out. But this was the second thing Gabe did for us. The first one was guest booker number 2 was Gabe. And then this, the Book of Secrets.
All right, we're here with Gabe again. Although the lower third under your image is going to read a little differently than last time we were together, because you're not with Ring of Honor and
I'm not employed.
You're not employed anywhere except tonight.
Right here by Sean. Thank you.
So you're fired or whatever, and we're doing this shoot now, and this is the first time you're talking about this in public. Should we expect anger? Should we expect what?
I am furious. No. I had a great 14 years, between Ring of Honor and ECW, and I understand why I was released. There are a lot of reasons. There's stress that had a big part of it. Everyone was feeling stressed at the time. I wasn't helping myself with my behavior. One of the big things that got back to me afterwards was that it was considered a dictatorship I was running, which a lot of the wrestlers won't agree with that, because a lot of them told me, it wasn't a dictatorship because it was everyone contributing ideas. But the bottom line was that, in the end, it was what I wanted on the show was that's what the show was going to be. So in that way, I guess you could say maybe I was a little difficult to work with, but I would want something done a certain way because I truly believe that was the best way to do it. So that was one of the reasons. There's other reasons that'll come out during the course of the interview, but I understand why it happened. Everything in life happens for a reason. I booked, I just want to say right now for the record, the last show that I booked was the October 25th, 2008 show. I don't even know what the title is of that show. I believe they titled it after I was gone. And the last DVD I produced was the Glory by Honor 7. From Philadelphia, which I'm glad that we put in some extra time on now, and I was actually almost missed my flight to the airport, putting in some extra videos and that kind of stuff, which looking back, I'm glad that I was able to do that, and we went out with a bang. So, I understand the reasons why it happened. I'm not bitter. I hate it when people do shoot interviews. Like, there's one guy, I'm not into burning bridges, but he had like a 10-year run in WWE, lots of different gimmicks. First thing he does when he gets fired, big shoot interview, oh, screw Vince, Triple H helped me back. It's like, dude, you had a 10-year run there and you made money for 10 years. Like, I had a job for 6.5 years doing this, and it was unbelievable. So, I could, maybe one day everyone gets rich, I'll get bitter, but that's not happening right now. So, I got no reason to be bitter at all or angry.
We talked a little bit before about writing for television, which it's akin to being a wrestling booker now, but in your case it was DVD, but it's the life's blood of a wrestling product. So you're burning through material at breakneck speed. Talk about the burnout factor in general, but then specifically to you. Where were you after, 6.5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I was burned out, because I promised myself when Ring of Honor first started, I'd never say that. I'd never get burned out. I'll let people be the judge if I was burned out or not. By the time we get to this interview, at the end of the interview, you'll see.
Well, if I asked Nigel, and if I went in the locker room and asked, "Were you burned out?"
I don't think that they would say I was burned out.
Okay.
I can honestly say that. I mean, booking Ring of Honor is a very tough job. It's there's no house shows. Every show has to be a DVD that sells. That's what the business model is. So when you're talking about 40 shows a year, which you have to run 40 shows, it's a lot of shows. That's like 40 weeks of pay-per-view. It's like doing 40 pay-per-views a year. So it's a tough job. You're booking to a particular audience. I'll try to answer some of the critics. Like you keep. There's people who are like, well, there's not enough characters and storylines in Ring of Honor. Well, there are a lot of characters and storylines, but the bottom line is that people, in my belief, don't buy DVDs for characters and storylines. At least the Ring of Honor audience buys DVDs for great matches. And you know what? We don't have TV to promote your characters and storylines. So if you had TV, it'd be a different product. What I booked in Ring of Honor, that's another thing I want to get to, is that a lot of people say, well, this is Gabe's booking style. No, it's one way that I can book, and it was the way I booked for this particular audience. If we had TV, there would be a lot more concentration on characters and storylines. But we still had characters and storylines. I thought we did some of our best character stuff this year with like the Nigel video, that we had the Claudio video, the Briscoes video. I'm really proud of the whole Daisy Hayes, Rhett Titus, Delirious thing. I thought that was a real intricate, different kind of heel turn. So, we always had that. The reason there wasn't more is because our audience buys great matches, and we don't have TV to promote it. You don't have TV, what can you do?
You talked about your versatility. Excuse me. You are vulnerable as well, Gabe.
I'm real vulnerable.
A sympathetic
right
character. Your versatility in booking, that you could book for anything, but I want to say, and this isn't a knock, but Ring of Honor, niche of a niche. Okay, a very definite place. So the booking style that you say sometimes you're criticized for was really created by design, right? I mean, you decided that you couldn't emulate what was going on in the big one or big two, wherever we are now. So it had to be run a certain way. So you kind of painted yourself into that box. You defend that decision, I assume, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what the Ring of Honor product was. My belief is that people would buy tickets and DVDs of Ring of Honor because they came to see great matches. That's first and foremost. That's the audience we're going to. If no one's going to be a better character than John Cena's amazing. And if you want to see that kind of TV star, that kind of character, you're going to watch WWE for free. So, even if we did have a John Cena type guy, and we've had even on our roster, we have a lot of guys right now, or on the roster, there are a lot of guys that could pull this off, but you don't have the TV to promote that character anyways. You have 6 pay-per-views a year, which now is another thing that became very difficult to book, is the continuity between the pay-per-views and the DVDs. I never really got into I think I did okay with it, but I never really got into a groove with the continuity there.
Well, let me ask you, because it's something worthy of discussion. Mm-hmm. Anyone who doesn't know, the pay-per-views were taped and then aired several months, 2-3 months afterwards, right? After the fact. So they're shot out of sequence, and sometimes that happens in wrestling anyway, but now you're talking about months. And you've got however many DVDs in between. How did you do that?
I mean, I don't think I ever hit the groove with it. I think that they kind of tied in, but it really called for a big suspension of disbelief from our audience. That might not be the right term, but we were asking our audience, hey, watch this out of order, but then this is going to air, but you're not supposed to know about this yet, even though we already taped it. And I think that in the long run was, something that definitely hurt the booking. I just don't think that I got the rhythm down of it. I think we had an okay rhythm going. I don't think it was a complete disaster by any means, but we never got like that really good groove going between the pay-per-views and the DVDs.
Let's talk about the pay-per-views as business people for a minute here. Let's pretend we work in Stanford, Connecticut. We're not wrestling people, we're business people. Did the pay-per-views work for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the pay-per-views were a great concept. I was against them when they were first suggested just because I saw, what expanding to DCW, and I was afraid of that happening. The problem with the pay-per-views is that we didn't get the kind of promotion that we thought we were going to get for them. Had we got that promotion, I think they would have been a lot more successful, And, I mean, I admit it, there's a part of me, too, that when I began to sell myself that these pay-per-views were going to work, which I did have to sell myself because eventually you go along with what the company wants. Mm-hmm. There's a part of me that said to myself, you hear about, like, the independent movie that, just spreads of word of mouth or a TV show that becomes big because of word of mouth. And, in the back of your mind, you're hoping, these pay-per-views will be so good, there'll be people sitting in WWE shows, and they'll hear the people in front of them talking about it, and then they'll go and buy it, and then that word of mouth will spread, and it'll be a real grassroots thing. And, it just didn't happen, or maybe that was an impossible dream, to begin with. But we just didn't get the promotion we needed for people to actually buy the pay-per-views, I think that I never really saw a buy rate. I heard numbers, but I never saw anything definite. But they did about the amount of buys that we wanted, but for whatever reason, it didn't increase the business the way that we thought it was going to.
And it didn't necessarily help you storyline wise with how difficult it was to manage.
No, and then it came into the whole continuity issue. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the pay-per-views themselves, I'm really proud of them. So I'm real proud of the content on them and what we were able to do with them.
So before we get to October of this year, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit, since you can speak frankly about it now, about the start of Ring of Honor and your involvement from the beginning with the entire cast of characters, some still there, some not, and how we got to where you were in October as Booker. Talk to me about the genesis of the company.
I mean, it just started out of an idea. It just started out of, hey, let's create a video product, and then it just grew. It became the kind of thing where we could run more than once a month, and I give Carrie Stilken a ton of credit. He was never afraid of expansion. It's something actually that I think I was afraid of. It was something that Shane Douglas used to say all the time about Paul Heyman back in ECW, where Heyman would get comfortable in where he was, the level that he was at, and you get comfortable there, and you're scared to try to take things to the next level because that's breaking your comfort zone. And there's a lot of other reasons. Shane was really good at explaining it, and I might have fell into that trap. Whereas Carrie was always had the goal of let's grow this, let's make it bigger, and he was aggressive about it, and he put himself on the line for that, and he deserves a lot of credit for that because we were able to do a lot of amazing things. If I had my way, I never would have gone to England, I never would have gone to Japan. Even going out to the Midwest was a big gamble, and Carrie always wanted to bring it to the fans, and he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that. And he always pushed me to leave my comfort zone and to leave that comfort zone. Even doing double shots, going from single to double shots, that was a tough thing for me because it went from having to do this once a weekend to crap, now I got to write 2 shows a weekend, and then now I could write 5 shows a week,
Was that always the plan? You talk about Japan and even just the Midwest, which is a big enough expansion.
Canada,
right. Was that always the plan? I mean, back when Rob and Doug and Carrie and you, was that always the plan to slowly spread much like a virus?
I mean, I guess it was Carrie's plan. My plan was I was just, after ECW, I was just thankful to be getting a paycheck, and that's all I wanted was just, what will keep us in business. That was always my goal. It's just what will keep us in business and what will keep, a paycheck coming to me, especially after everything with ECW. So my plan was just to do what it took to keep this thing alive.
Did anyone formally come to you and make you book, or is this something that you just kind of grew into the position because you were the most vocal with the ideas from the creative team?
I think that might be it. I think you might have hit it. I mean, it's tough for me to go all the way back, but when the idea started, I came in immediately with ideas and people liked them, and then I just grew from that point, I guess you could say.
Okay. So we get to October of this year, and take me there. What's going on? And I know you voiced to Carrie that a new direction is imminent.
Yes.
Is imminent.
It was
Only you didn't know how imminent
Yes.
it was.
It was actually pretty funny because going back, and something I want to get to first is people see I'm reading off these notes because where a month or so has passed, and I got these notes out of my head the week after I was fired, just because I didn't want to keep them in my head, and I sent them over to Sean so Sean can verify all this was said and done before Ring of Honor ran any shows without me. So that's important. So that's why I keep going back to the notes, because I didn't want I just putting all this stuff back in the forefront of my mind, which I didn't want to keep in the forefront of my mind for the last 4 or 5 weeks. So
that's part of the thing here was that this wouldn't be influenced by anything that did happen in Ring of Honor. So yes, these were sent to me a long time ago.
Exactly. So ironically, I did start a lot of new directions on October 24th and 25th weekend, which was the Danbury and Edison shows. And it is funny because I'm going back to late August or September. We had our 4 big shows in September, which are our big shows for our Christmas DVD season. So everything was already set in motion for those. But I remember in late August and September saying to Carrie, I need to blow up my formulas. The people have seen the way that I write for long enough. They know my voice on the website. They've been reading my same hype phrases forever. They've been seeing the same patterns on the shows forever. I need to blow it all up and start over. So that is ironic. So even I saw there's a need for a change, which I didn't think the change would be that drastic, but I knew that what I was doing was getting stale. So so I started trying a lot of new things, which all started in that 1024 and 1025 weekend. We tried a lot of new talent out, Cheech and Cloudy, The Portal, Brody Lee. There were others that we were going to try out. I thought Cheech and Cloudy did really good in their match, by the way, and Brody Lee I'll talk about more. I changed up my writing style on the website. Again, I was pushing, we need a different voice on the website. I started the No Hype news wires. I started what I called the challenge articles, which we didn't really get a chance to take off, but they basically are articles that had quotes in the headline of a wrestler making a challenge, and then 3 days later, the next wrestler would answer it. I think we did it with Steen and Generico and the Briscoes to build up their Toronto match. But I was trying to figure out new ways to not use the same hype phrases I had been using and write differently. And I was also trying to think of different formats to put in the cards together. The Edison show, the 1025 show, just a quicker paced undercard. I tried something there. I recognized the weaknesses of our shows. We had to create moments on our shows. That's why Homicide came out at the very beginning of the October 24th show. Just something to switch up the formula and try to create moments. There weren't a lot of moments on our shows. Daisy Hayes getting spiked in the Steel Cage Warfare at Glory by Honor 7. That was a moment. We needed more of those. Tried some surprise, minor run-ins, nothing major. Prince Nana that weekend, Brody Lee that weekend. Probably would have done some stuff coming up. And again, now we're falling into anything in the future after 1025 is all fantasy booking, because you just don't know, there might be no-shows, weather problems, travel problems, talent disputes, new ideas might come up. So when I talk of anything past 1025, it's not company secrets or anything like that. It's all fantasy booking and all pretty much stuff I was aware of and whatnot.
Well, they're your secrets.
Yes.
It's what's in your mind.
They are my secrets. You're right. You're 100% right.
That's right. You're hired as a booker because they want your mind. So what's in your head, you own.
Yes, it is my secret. So we had the Prince Nana thing, which I had high hopes for. Brody Lee, who was going to be given a good opportunity. I felt a need that we needed something to create a little more excitement like that. I also felt we were severely lacking in crowd interaction. The Jimmy Rave toilet paper thing was so awesome. That was one of my favorite things in company history. And whoever the fans are out there, if you're watching this, who threw the first couple of rolls of toilet paper at Jimmy Rave, thank you very much. You threw those rolls at Jimmy Rave, and I said to myself, this is awesome. Jimmy Rave came back, and I was like, Jimmy, we got something here. And he goes, this is awesome. We cut that one promo upstairs in the Cleveland building, which was in the video wire, and then it just built on. And I really think people came to our shows to throw toilet paper at Jimmy Rave, and we hadn't had anything like that in a while. So I wasn't sure what that was going to be. I kept kind of looking for something from the crowd to kind of hook on to the way that the original toilet paper thing came, but it was something I was thinking about and thinking a lot about. I was hoping something for Claudio, actually, when it came to that. We also needed some fun gimmicks on the show, so that's where you saw Grizzly Redwood, who Mitch Franklin came up with that whole thing on his own, and a really hard worker. Nana, of course, is always fun. Rhett Titus, who did phenomenal on that whole Daisy Hayes Delirious thing. And I was working on stuff going on anytime. If you went to the Edison show on 1025, you might have seen Rhett Titus was trying to pick up a girl in the lobby before the show, and Daisy Hayes went out and confronted him, and they got in a yelling match. Or no cameras around. It's just for whatever 25 fans were in the lobby, something different, something that got a little buzz going. Then when the fans were leaving the building in Edison, Brent Albright was being attacked in the parking lot, and I actually had a lot of fun, and it's actually really cool that that's the last thing that I booked. Was I went and stood by the doorway and watched the fans as they leave the building, and they come out, oh, cool show, blah blah blah, and then they turn and see something that's going on and be like, oh my god, and you just saw person after person doing it and going and watching the angle. And a part of me, the artist part of me, is proud of the fact that the final angle I booked saw the police called, 3 police officers called, leaving their cars with batons in hand, ready to break up a riot. So although maybe it's not the smartest thing, I am proud of that fact, and I went out with a bang. So but we were trying to do stuff like that. Homicide's ring entrance at the beginning of the show and Danbury, just to mix things up. And I also started saying 3 things to myself after booking every card. And this all started on October 24th. The first thing was, how does this benefit Tyler Black? Tyler Black was going to be the chosen one in my fantasy land. And we started that on 10/24. He was the only one that entire weekend to go over Homicide. And we had that be the first fall in that elimination tag match, so that it would be very memorable and stand out. And the sequence that he pinned Homicide was also going to be very important for where we were going in the future. It was he gave his God's Last Gift, and Homicide kicked out and went right up for the Phoenix and pinned Homicide with the Phoenix. So that's an important sequence to remember there. So number 1 thing was, how does this benefit Tyler Black? Number 2 thing was, how does this benefit Davey Richards? Davey had just come back from Japan after 3 months, and he's just ready for that push. He's a monster. He always had potential. Now he had 3 months off, so he got freshened up, and he's ready to come back with a vengeance. And that started because in that big tag schmoz in Danbury, he was the only one to go over one of the tag champs in there. And that was part of the reason. I got in an argument with some of the guys that night about, well, that's another tangent, but about there are too many falls, or they wanted more falls, but I wanted fewer falls so people would remember Tyler going over Homicide, Davey going over one of the tag champs, and then that also sets up something else with Sweet and Sour Inc. and the tag champs. He was going to go over Albright the next night in Edison, but he sprained his ankle, so we put him in the 6-man mayhem, so he wouldn't have to do as much. And originally, I think Jason Blade was going to go over with the low blow on Ruckus, but that got switched to Davey because I, again, went back and said, how does this benefit Davey Richards? He's got to go over if he's in the 6-man mayhem. Mm-hmm. The low blow is something to remember, too. That'll come up in the future. And the other thing, and Jimmy, I'm sorry, please don't be mad at me, but we had to keep Jimmy Jacobs out of the main event. Jimmy Jacobs had main evented a lot of shows that year, and I'm not saying he was permanently out of the main event. It wasn't a demotion. It was just, in fact, Jimmy was going to be in a major angle coming up the final battle, so stay tuned for that. But for the next 3 or 4 months, we had to keep Jimmy Jacobs out of the main event. He main evented every show in September. We had 4 big shows in September. He was the main event of every one. And, that's a huge compliment to Jimmy Jacobs himself, but it was time to switch things up. And Jimmy is just a worker. I mean, I used to call him or I still do, he's the closest thing to Eddie Gilbert to me right now in the independents or in wrestling. And comparing him to Eddie Gilbert to where he is a modern-day Eddie Gilbert, there's no higher compliment from me than that. Jimmy Jacobs is a worker. He gets it. He understands it. Joey Matthews deserves a lot of credit there. When Joey Matthews had his short little run for us earlier this year, his knowledge just opened up a whole new world to Jimmy Jacobs. He understood it, but sometimes you need that guy to open things up to you. And Joey Matthews had that effect on Jimmy Jacobs, and Jimmy Jacobs is just such a he's a worker. That's how you describe him. He's a worker. But his time in the main event was over.
So, since we're going to take it from when you are gone and your last show, October 25th. For anyone that might not be familiar, tell us where we are as of October 25th, the angles that are running, whether you're going to continue them or not. Get us up to speed with what's in progress and what would be resolved through the course of the rest of the year.
All right, I'm just going to read this off a list real quick, so bear with me. We have the Austin Aries Jimmy Jacobs blow-off coming up. They had the 3-match series coming up. And one thing I want to note is that this feud, especially stuff with Age of the Fall, that was more that was supposed to be more of your out of the box wrestling feud, more on a cerebral level, more progressive kind of stuff. More artsy kind of stuff, if you will. So we had that Aries Jimmy Jacobs blow off, the Nigel McGuinness title reign, and what a tremendous job Nigel did as champion. It was winding down though, and but the whole time we have Nigel McGuinness showing strength. We did the storyline with a lot of our champions where they'd wear down as their title reign went on. With Nigel McGuinness, he was getting stronger as going on, but as you'll see, his title reign was wearing down. Brian and Claudio were having their feud, Brian Danielson and Claudio. And I'm not sure how long that would go. That was going to get, we were going to feel that out, but we had that going. Steen and Generico as strong babyface tag team champions, and they had a lot of challengers ahead of them. That was going to be a nice title reign in my fantasy world. Then we had the big Tyler Black push and the separation from Jimmy Jacobs. A subtle thing that we did on that was on October 25th when the Age of the Fall attacked Necro Butcher. Tyler Black was not involved in that. And then what we were going to start building was a kind of change in philosophy between Jimmy Jacobs, where Jimmy Jacobs is sliding into madness, and Tyler Black is basically Barack Obama, where he's positive, change, building towards the future. So you had them. So it wasn't going to be a split so much where, you cost me this match, although we did kind of do that on the pay-per-view. But it wasn't going to be one of those traditional wrestling splits. You're more going to see a different philosophies from each guy, and they were going to just kind of split that way. But of course, there would be a big angle, and we'll get to that. We got Davey Richards is back, ready for a big push. Steen and Generico versus Briscoes is heating up. We spent a year without them touching, so I felt we could go back to that. Because a new twist, Steen and Generico as the baby faces, the Briscoes changing their style to more brawling, going heel. We had the returns of Samoa Joe, Marufuji, and Morishima coming up, so that's just nice stuff to mix it up. The other big feud was the Roderick Strong, Eric Stevens, Brent Albright versus Sweet and Sour Inc. And that was the opposite of like the Age of the Fall feud, where that is your basic professional wrestling feud. You jumped me, now I want revenge. You offered me a contract, you're a scumbag, I don't want it, now you beat me up. Just as basic, you don't have to follow the details. The Age of the Fall stuff, was something that was supposed to be very intricate, you had to follow closely. This was what you see is what you get, as basic as it gets. So I thought we had a nice mix with the different factions there, doing different things in feuds. Jerry Lynn with his one last shot at the title storyline. Necro versus Age of the Fall, and now it's going to lead to a big Necro Brody Lee match and Necro character development, where he needs to earn more money fighting because it's the only way he can provide for his family. And that actually all came by accident. That came off a clip on a New Level DVD, which just wasn't designed, it just happened, and then we ran with it, where at the end of the match, and probably most fans didn't even notice it, Necro goes up and kisses his wife, who was probably 8 months pregnant at the time or whatever, but she was about to burst. So you saw Necro who just has his aura about him, kissing this very pregnant wife of his. And I thought it was an amazing moment. I thought it was something where we could start featuring in videos once we got into it. And I always like those things where people would go back and watch a DVD again and they'd notice something and go, oh, wow, that was the start of it, or something like that. So that was going to be it. So it was a very small moment on that DVD, but something we were going to build an entire character out of. And, Jimmy, our camera guy, deserves a lot of credit for getting that. We had a great camera staff, or they still do. I used to have them.
You'll
Not
get
anymore.
used to it.
Yeah.
Like the ex-wife.
Yeah. But between Eric, who also did an awesome job on the videos, I talked about those character-defining videos before. I would tape the material with the guys, and then Eric would piece it together, and those videos did a fantastic job on those. Extremely talented at videos. Jimmy on camera work. Eric did a lot of camera work. He was real good. David's excellent staff. There. So, but getting back to things, then we had Daisy Hayes Rhett Titus thing, Sarah Del Rey going after the Shimmer title, Vulture Squad, YRR feud was about to start. That was getting underway with that Jason Blade low blow and Ruckus on 1025. The Prince Nana storyline, which I was a big fan of, where basically he lost all his money and now he's had to start at the bottom, or he had to beg for a job, which is very ironic because I gave him the lines about, he and Edison about, hey, I'm going to drive a taxi, which pretty soon I might be driving a taxi. It's definitely a possibility. And also lines about how he could only afford to eat off the dollar menu. And you know what? The dollar menu is a little out of my price range right now. I do like the volcano taco for 89 cents at Taco Bell. So
life imitates art.
Yes. So a lot of irony there.
It's just like you're living a Woody Allen film.
Yes. And Prince
Woody
Nana...
Allen reference on a shoot interview with DVD. There you go. Where I am. Go ahead.
All right, well, I do want to give the Prince some credit there because he did add the shrimp cocktail line, which was absolutely genius and great. One of the storylines I was most looking forward to doing was the Daisy Hayes Delirious broken friendship one, and Daisy Hayes trying to save Delirious from the Age of the Fall. That was going to get a lot more emphasis after the Wreck Daisy Hayes angle came to a close. Sweet and Sour Inc. challenging for the tag titles. That kind of got underway with Davey Richards. I think it was Kevin Steen that he pinned in that tag match in Danbury. We had other dangling things. Marufuji coming back for a shot at the world title. We set that up at the previous Hammerstein show. The Morishima Bryan Danielson feud was unresolved. Nigel challenging for the tag titles. We did some angles for that. And of course the big one, the Bryan versus Nigel pay-per-view match, which we had built since basically the first pay-per-view on our pay-per-view series and have been building much longer than that. So for people who say we didn't have storylines, we had all that going on.
Had a lot of storylines. That's where we are in October. Now, this was all you were going to kind of bring this to your final two shows of the year. Were going to be in New York and Philly.
Philly and New York,
okay.
Yes. Which I am going to have to make sure I'm doing something that weekend with my time because it's going to be hard not being there. But
I'm sure they'll comp you.
Yeah. All right.
You might even get good seats.
Yeah. But yeah.
But that's where it was headed, right?
Right now we're working towards the end point. The end point is Philly and the Hammerstein, which is just two of the biggest buildings. I mean, that you could call that the biggest weekend in company history. That's two huge buildings. Going to the ECW arena, obviously, for all the shows I saw there means a great deal to me, and running the Hammerstein is just unbelievable. And then coming out of that and coming out of these last few months, you also want to have your first quarter. I always like to set things up by the season, really. So you'd want your first quarter of 2009 set up. So, we would have huge shows on Philly and Hammerstein and then hit the ground running into 2009 with a hot start.
All right. Have some water. You're going to need it. Your video wire, your promos. Talk about the construction of them, and then we'll.
Well, basically, and this is good that we're going to cover this now because this would all fit into the shows, and I haven't gone into that much detail yet. Usually, all the videos, all the promos for like the video wires and the DVDs, I'd write those about 24 to 48 hours prior to the event, and even right up to bell time, or even you're at a show and you get an idea and you shoot it. So basically all I had at this point was a rough idea of what stories needed to be conveyed in the video wires and DVDs. So Sean, if you give me the opportunity, I will run those down right now. So we have an idea. So all this stuff would have aired in the video wires and on the DVDs throughout till up through the Final Battle DVD. So the big stuff we had, and a lot of other ideas will come up. Again, this is 24 to 48 hours when you come up with a lot of stuff. So promos and storylines in the works, that was in my head. The big one, we did have a big arc with Rhett, Daisy Hayes, and Delirious. And now it's going to be replaced by the new big one, was going to be Strong, and was going to be Brent Albright putting together his team for Steel Cage Warfare at the Hammerstein on 12/27, last show of the year, to combat Sweet and Sour Inc. And of course we had Strong and Stevens, who just had an underrated, amazing feud. I mean, they just put it all on the line in that feud against each other. And I was never a fan. I always hated it when guys would feud and then all of a sudden they'd be friends without a strong reason for it. I just never liked that. But I thought that Strong and Stevens were going to be an incredible tag team with each other. So we were going to have a story. The big storylines that would have taken place throughout the video wires and the shows would be Albright recruiting Strong and Stevens individually. We never would have had them in the same room together. Or Strong and Stevens volunteering to be on the team. then learning that each other were on the team, being dissatisfied with that, and I'm happy about that. Albright trying to pull it all together, but we weren't going to see Strong and Stevens really come together side by side until that final battle scene. So we'd have that as a big thing, with Brent Albright trying to pull them, bring them together. Then you had the Bobby Dempsey abuse storyline with Albright, Stevens, and Strong all individually telling him to stand up for himself. We had already had that well underway. Well, not well underway, but it was underway. Jerry Lynn, I thought we'd have a great story of him having some ups and downs on his final run of the title, on his quest to the title. Of course, the Necro Butcher character that I talked about before. A big focus, which I'm really sorry we weren't able to get to, or at least I wasn't, was Roderick Strong feature on why he hates Larry Sweeney. And I thought this was going to be a great opportunity to really give Roddy some character and really a way to propel him. At that point, Roderick Strong has had such an amazing career in Ring of Honor. I mean, you look at all the matches that he's been involved in against, the Bryan matches. The James Gibson match in Philly is one of my favorite. The tag title reign with Austin Aries. I mean, the list goes on and on. The whole interview could be about that. So it's time for people to begin to realize how he's been such a huge part, because I don't think he ever got the credit for it. So we were going to put him over. We were going to use Sweeney as the anti-ROH. He's bringing the ugly side of sports business into ROH. Roderick Strong would be against all this. He loves Ring of Honor. He's given himself to Ring of Honor. Here's Sweeney trying to corrupt everything. So we'd use that and try to really put Roddy over as like an ROH veteran at that point. Give him the credit that he really deserved for his work. So that was a big thing. A Claudio feature on Why He Hates Bryan. That goes actually back to the match I had in Toronto afterwards. The promo didn't really come out the way I wanted to live, but the whole idea behind that was that Bryan disrespected Claudio in front of a fan. Then the next night, after his title match with Nigel, Nigel put him over after that match. We put that promo on a video wire. It was on the actual pay-per-view, but that was after their pay-per-view title match in Detroit. So here's Bryan disrespecting Claudio in front of the fan, whether it really was disrespecting him or not. In Claudio's mind, it was. And here's Nigel putting him over. So that's what was going to bring Nigel and Claudio together. You have Daisy Hayes going after Red and pleading to Delirious. And one of my favorite standbys, which was lazy, was just for the DVD, just doing promos with who's ever in the main event about being in the main event. It's good to do, but it doesn't take a lot of thought. Promo Nigel maintaining strength as champion as opposed to wearing down. The YRR character defining promos. I wish we were able to do that. One of my favorite things, I don't have the show name in front of me, was the beach party that we did in FIP with the YRR, where they basically just were having a beach party in the crowd during the matches. It was a lot of fun. Austin Aries and Jimmy Jacobs saying they were very similar to each other, or not saying it, but people around them saying it. We had started that on 8:15 and 8:16 with Tyler Black, I believe, in Cleveland, cut a promo making reference to it. Then Necro cut a promo making reference to it. And again, that would be one of those things where after you saw the end result, you'd go back and watch the DVDs and go, oh, wow, the seeds are set. So those were that's what we had going on. A lot of stuff was going to be added to that, but those are the ideas. So we had storylines and characters. But go ahead.
So, kind of the point of why we're here is to see where we would have gone under your dictatorship had you remained. So this is the book. The book. They're giving him the book.
The booking book.
They're giving him the book. He's got the book. Who's got the book? He had the book. There's the book. Let's go show by show.
All right. Well,
And
first,
let's start in November, where you would have been first week of November, I guess, right?
yes. So let's open up the book. The book has not been opened up. Well, it was opened up a couple of times, but it has not been opened up in about a month or so. It's almost like that town by Chernobyl where they just had to vacate it and real fast, and everything was just left behind. So,
Well, based on your company's history, who knows what's going to fall out of here? Okay, so go ahead.
that's probably an analogy that'll get me heat, but who cares? But yes, here it is. There you see nice little show format for Montreal. That would be, can you see that? It would be rewritten several times, but that's what we had right now. Lots of notes on it. And I always like putting stickers on my book. So, a little immature, but got Neurosis, Slayer. So I always like stickers.
Something tells me this is the very binder you used in high school. Could it be?
No, I would actually, and this is embarrassing to say, but I would get a new booking book at the beginning of the year to celebrate the beginning of the year, and I would put new stickers on it.
Oh, okay.
And then I keep it for the year.
Didn't Dusty do that?
He might have.
I thought that the Slayer sticker on the front of the little 1987
He might have had a Hank
book
Williams.
he did.
He might have had a Hank Williams sticker
okay.
on it, but yes. So here is the book. So
let's go to the first show, which would have been November.
You're going to Montreal. Now, one thing you will see in all this is that Montreal was about 2.5 weeks away at this point from probably when I wrote this. So you'll see that I had stuff about 2-3 weeks outside the show. I'd have stuff like match order down and maybe some of the pacing stuff. And then you'll see as we work towards Final Battle in my fantasy world that it was more, okay, these matches are going to take place, these angles are going to take place, and then all that would come together as we got closer. So
before I even start, I want to ask you something about your book.
Okay.
Bell times?
That would just be the time that the match should be over.
Should be over.
Yeah. So the segment should be over.
What's the breakdown of the numbers prior to the...
It's like match and segment time. It's not really an exact science by any means, but you know what? I kind of worked out this formula, and it kind of always worked out timing wise. So
may I show?
Yeah, go ahead. But okay. That's definitely not an exact science by any means.
You kind of got the match here, the match, and then a couple of numbers, a 10 and a 15, and then the 8:20. So they should be out of the ring at 8:20.
They should be in the locker room by 8:20 at that point.
And these guys should be in at 8:30. These 8:50 all the way up to 11:30.
Far from an exact science, but it always seems to time out.
You're never going to be able to defend the 4-hour shows now by saying, "Hey, we just ran over," because you're rigidly timed. There's the cat's out of the bag.
But people
now.
didn't always follow the times.
Okay, well,
so
there you go.
For instance, I always had intermission down for 20 minutes, and I don't think we actually had many 20-minute intermissions as much as I would have loved to have had every intermission be 20 minutes. But you got to sell your merch, so it's okay.
I cut you off. Go ahead. Let's go to the meat of it here.
So we are in Montreal, our big Montreal debut. I would have liked to have been there. It's probably a good show. But so first thing you do is ask yourself what's your considerations for this show. For Montreal, it was a first-time market. The advance, when I was fired, wasn't the best. I believe second-row tickets are still available, which is not a company secret. You can just go on the website and see what's available. Steen and Generico, big hometown baby faces, and we had no return date to Montreal for months. It wasn't until a few months into 2009, so you didn't have to really worry about building show to show. So at this point, I had the lineup. Probably would have changed, but it might not have. So going into this one, on my Fantasy Montreal show, we were going to open it up with Kenny King, who I had very high hopes for, and I'll talk about Kenny a little bit later, against Eric Stevens. And my thinking behind that match was they were good opponents in Florida against each other. They could go out there, have a good, solid opening match. You go into something like a Montreal debut. I was a big fan of going in there and having a real good match, in your debut show, in your debut town to start things off. You want to show people what Ring of Honor is all about right off the bat. You don't want to bring out. I'm trying not to bury anybody, but you don't want to bring out a match that's not going to be the best match. You want to define. This is Ring of Honor. We're defining ourselves. Eric Stevens and Kenny King would have that match. Eric Stevens would go over. Kenny King could afford to do jobs at this point because his push was going to start in a tag team with the YRR. That I'll talk about later. So a good competitive, basic baby heel opener to start off your Montreal debut. And a couple of things I do want to note is that there'd be a lot more detail work going into those shows, about 24 to 72 hours before the show. Spice things up a little bit. Like, for instance, this Montreal show, we'd probably do some sort of angle at the beginning of the show to bookend it with something that would happen towards the end of the show. I was a big fan of bookending shows with angles or having a little story going throughout it, especially for a debut show or something like, maybe you think Montreal, well, Davey Richards and Roderick Strong, they might not be that well known in the Montreal market, so let's do a little angle with them at the beginning, so their match in the second half means a little more. But again, that would all be determined 24 to 72 hours before the show. Second, we had Kenny Omega, who is in my fantasy world would get a huge push against Rhett Titus. So you got Kenny Omega, nice basic 6-minute match here. Kenny Omega gets his first win, gets over his finish in the standard spots. Red has a chance to have a good match here because now Red got to the point where you need to have good matches in Ring of Honor. At least while I was there, my philosophy is you had to have good matches because in the end, people are paying to see the matches. Red had he's got all the natural ability in the world. He's got the character down. I mean, phenomenal with the character. He's got the promos down. Now it's time to start putting him into matches where he has a chance to have a pretty good showing, So hopefully he has a good showing against Kenny Omega there. And so nice solid win to get Kenny Omega going. Eddie Edwards, Jay Briscoe I had for match number 3. Another good solid ROH style match. I was going to try to start putting more emphasis on mat work, and I was trying to do that actually, and if you watch the instant replay packages we put on the one Japan DVD and the Glory by Honor 7 DVD where we emphasize Bryan Danielson and Nigel doing mat work on the Japan DVD and Bryan Danielson and Nakajima doing mat work on the Philly DVD. So that would be more of a mat-based match. Then Necro versus Mark Briscoe. Now, this is a good first-time market match because you couldn't do it in the United States, or in our regular markets, I'm going to say, because people had seen Necro versus the Briscoes a bunch of times. However, first time in Montreal, we never did get the singles match in between Mark and Necro in ROH. They had a really good match in FIP about a year and a half earlier, but we never got that singles. By the way, let me just say that FIP feud with Briscoes versus Necro and Pondo, go seek it out, especially the final match. Talk about a feud that needs more eyes, that more people should have seen. I mean, those guys just unbelievable. But anyway, so there's your brawl match of the show. We get in the singles match. We do it in a new market, so you do this match in Edison, no one's going to care. They've seen Necro and the Briscoes, a million times there. Necro's over, so we start getting him some wins. And, Mark Briscoe, it doesn't matter if he goes over in singles. Jay, the same thing. Eddie Edwards was going to go over, give Eddie Edwards a win over Jay to follow up on the Roderick Strong match, or win from New York. And, you can't job the Briscoes out, but they're a tag team. And the Briscoes are just, I can't say enough good things about the Briscoes. I mean, ROH legends, I always like the term ROH legends, and to me it was special to be considered that, and the Briscoes are definitely it. First ballot Hall of Famers, if Ring of Honor ever has a Hall of Fame. Then going into intermission, we had Austin Aries and Bryan Danielson versus Jimmy Jacobs and Tyler Black. Stipulation was the winner would get a tag title shot in Dayton. That was more than DVD for the DVD series. We weren't really going to emphasize it because if you're in Montreal, why do you really care who's getting the main event or the tag title shot in Dayton? But
if you're anywhere, why do you care who's getting the title shot in Dayton?
Oh, I'll get to Dayton later. But Aries and Bryan against Jacobs and Black. You can go in and say, hey, here's your pay-per-view main event rematch, so you can get away with doing that match there and hype it up as a big match. You're getting a pay-per-view main event rematch there. You have the whole Aries and Age of the Fall issue in there, so you get that. And here I will explain some of my controversial philosophies on pacing a card. I firmly believe that for the audience we were going for in Ring of Honor, and to sell DVDs, you can't have a first half where nothing really goes on. You're not going to sell DVDs that way. At least that was my belief. So the way that I would usually pace cards, and there's going to be a lot of old school people out there laughing at this, but hey, I did sell a lot of DVDs, is you had to build to a main event in the first half and a main event in the second half. It was almost like putting two cards together instead of one big card. And you had intermission, you would go into, and especially us, we'd have to have long intermissions, to sell some merch. So you'd have intermission to cool people down, but you'd have to have that main event in the first half. People aren't going to buy a card of, even average to good matches, even good matches, it's hard to sell. They need a couple of big matches. So, for instance, this Montreal show, you had Kenny and Eric starting it off in the first half. They're not going to, they'll have a real good match, but it's not going to take away from later on the show. Kenny, Omega, and Red, kind of a spotlight match. Jay and Edwards, good kind of wrestling match. Then you start turning it up a little bit with Necro and Mark, and this is where people will get into, Gabe didn't know how to pace a card. Well, yeah, that's how I paced it. And you had to have a brawl, so here's the brawl. And then you have your blow-away main event match in the first half. So then you take your intermission, you take a breath. At the same time, your main event of the show is the main event of the show, So you take a breath, go into intermission after that. Coming out of intermission, I had the IWS guys against the Ring of Honor graduates in a 6-man match. Put the IWS guys over because it's just not cool. to go and beat the hometown guys or the home fed guys. I mean, you can't. I mean, the IWS guys could lose to the Briscoes, but no offense to the graduates, you can't beat them like that. So here's a little nice little. I was a big believer in the popcorn segment or match too, where you got to give people that chance to settle back in their seats a little bit. So you get people settling back in their seats. Brody Lee comes out afterwards and destroys everyone. So you get him over as a monster. Then next is Delirious and Jerry Lynn. Delirious is just like here you're dealing with two guys that are just pros in like every sense of the word. Delirious is just a pro. You can put him anywhere in the card and any type of match, and he delivers. Jerry Lynn is I mean, there's a reason he's so respected. He definitely deserves every bit of that respect. So, they know exactly what to do in that spot. Then get Jerry Lynn with a win there. Delirious, doesn't matter if he wins or loses. You got to be careful not to kill people, but Delirious at this point, with what he has going on with his storylines, and he's all crazy and everything, doesn't matter if he wins or loses. Plus, Jerry Lynn's the one that's heading towards the title shot. Delirious is not. Then your semi-main, we have Davey Richards and Roderick Strong. Davey gets his win back from Japan in a shorter, more intense match than the Japan match. Clean finish, because again, how does this benefit Davey Richards? We're giving him a big push. And they did have that longer match in Japan because there are only 6 matches on that show, so we need to kill a little time. And they did a fantastic job killing time on that one. And the idea in Japan, too, is that we did promos on that DVD with them saying, let's see who the better wrestler is. So you kind of covered your ass from why aren't they just going in there and beating the heck out of each other, which they did end up doing anyways. But this match would be more intense, more of a grudge kind of match. And then we go to the main event, of which I booked myself into a corner. It was basically, here's what was happening, is I was trying to come up with all new stuff because I knew we needed new stuff. And the Montreal show was coming up on us fast, and I think we were something like 4 weeks out without a lot announced for it. So we had to get the main event announced to sell some tickets because, again, you go on the website, there's second row tickets on there. That's not good. So I said, okay, let's put all the champions in an elimination match, and sounds cool. So it was Nigel McGuinness versus Kevin Steen versus El Generico, who were the tag champs. Nigel, of course, the RH World Champ, and Go Shiozaki, the FIP champ. Only the world title's on the line. Now, I booked it, announced it, thought it was cool. Then I started to think about it a little bit more. Maybe that's a sign of burnout that I booked this before, given a lot of thought. But again, I won't admit to burnout. And
despite the truth.
Yeah, well, no. And then, Nigel here. So now you're in a situation where both Kevin Steen and El Generico have to be defeated in their hometown, or else you put them over for the world title, and neither of them are going over the world title. So, crap. So I booked myself in a little bit of a corner there. I guess it worked out okay in the end. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I didn't see it. But basically I was going to try to cover that up by giving Steen and Generico nice solid double team win over Go Shiozaki, so the people get to see him hit some double teams, a nice win. Then Nigel get a quick roll up like right away to eliminate one of them, and then you have Nigel versus either Steen or Generico. We were going to see, I think they were both a little banged up, so we were going to see who was less banged up, and they get that final spot there. And then, hopefully in the end the fans wouldn't be too upset that you just defeated both their hometown guys. So little snafu there, but I think it turned out okay.
November 8th.
All right. We are going back to Toronto, and boy, did I enjoy the first Toronto show there. I thought it was a great show, a great market, great crowd, a market that we really had to build and maintain, because you get some markets like Chicago, New York, Philly, where you're going to go there and break even or hopefully make some money. And that way you can go to a lesser market on that weekend coupled up with that. But Toronto was an A-plus market. So we're coming into an A-plus market. We're following up a big debut show. We have no return date set for months, and Steen and Generico home country. So those are your show considerations. So here we go. We have Eric Stevens against Delirious in the opener. Nice 8 to 10 minute opener. And again, this is where Delirious just being so versatile really helps. I love the opening matches Delirious had in Orlando. I mean, he just knows the spot, knows what to do, gets it done. And if you put him anywhere, and he's going to deliver. So again, you had Eric going over. So Eric gets a couple of good wins that weekend. Then you had here again, the purist out there who read the so-called booking handbook that's out there that defines all the booking rules that God forbid you break will throw a fit at this one. But you know what? No rule book like that exists, so I don't care. Tyler Black against Kenny Omega would be match number 2, and you know what I was going to tell him? Go out there for 12 or 15 minutes. Don't go overboard with the false finishes. I believe that's where like you really start to burn crowds out, is on the falsies. I don't think too many spots, although that is a big thing. But the false finishes is where you really kill people, especially ridiculous kicking out of finishers one. I am against those, except for very special circumstances. But I was going to tell him not to go overboard with the false finishes. Go out there. You got 12 or 15 minutes. Steal the show and make the people hungry for the rematch, make the people hungry for more Kenny Omega, and showcase Tyler Black as a star in the match, and having great matches against guys who are not named Nigel McGuinness, Bryan Danielson, and Austin Aries. Because Tyler Black, it's fantastic, obviously, as you'll see. Running through this, I had lots of high hopes for him, but he needed to start having great matches against people not named Nigel, Bryan, and Aries, because you know what, a lot of people can go in there and have great matches against Nigel, Bryan, and Aries, because Nigel, Bryan, and Aries are that good. So this was a good comparison to this match would have been the El Generico match he had in Chicago, which I thought was an excellent match. It was low on the show, but something to get people hungry and without burning out a lot of false finishes. So Tyler Black goes over. Oh, and here's a big thing I forgot, is we started this on October 25th in Edison, where Tyler Black was going to do promos after every match, talking about the need for change. Again, more irony there. Talking about the need for change and preaching his more positive than Jimmy Jacobs attitude. So, and at the same time, I felt the one weakness of Tyler Black's game, which I don't even really want to call it a weakness, because I don't think it was one, but the weak point might have been his live promos. So I wanted to give him a lot of opportunities to cut live promos here, so he could really work on them leading into when the big thing happened at Final Battle. Should I already reveal it or not? I don't know. No. All right, but whatever. So leading up to that, so it was part of getting Tyler talking in front of the crowd and being able to work with him and getting those promos done. So he was going to cut his promo here. Blah blah blah. So, and here's the other thing. You can also have a bigger match here at number 2, because coming out at number 3 is Bryan Danielson versus Eddie Edwards. And Bryan Danielson is so over, and let me just say right now, is that if you were to ask me who's the number 1 guy in company history of Ring of Honor, is it Homicide, is it Punk, is it Samoa Joe, is it Aries, is it Strong, is it the Briscoes? It's Bryan Danielson, in my opinion. So I will say that without a moment's hesitation.
Wow.
So, I mean, you're talking about a guy who was in the main event from the first show, and definitely, he had his hiatuses, but you go back through history and what he's done, Bryan Danielson's the number 1 guy in Ring of Honor history. He's the Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, Lou Gehrig all rolled into one. So anyway, so Bryan's coming out as match number 3, and no matter what he does, he's over. So he can go out there and have a slower paced match, be over without doing a lot of stuff in the match, and there you're getting a little bit of pacing. So they'd have a good 8 to 10 minutes, a lot of mat work in there. And I actually was hesitant to give this match away, because I felt that Bryan versus Eddie could be a bigger match down the line, but we just needed opponents there. All right, so then we have match number 4 is Davey Richards versus Jerry Lynn. Davey goes over clean, so that's part of Davey's push continues. And another key thing that I had in the back of my mind was that only Davey Richards and Tyler Black were going to pin Jerry Lynn clean on Jerry Lynn's road to his title shot or his comeback. So that kind of puts Davey and Tyler on a little bit of a parallel path. Even if no one really picks up on it, you hope it's subtle, but that people feel it. They might not know it, but they feel it, and you hope that. So they're on kind of parallel paths. And because I'm hoping that Tyler Black and Davey Richards can be a huge Hammerstein Ballroom kind of main event in 2009 at some point. So, and this again, we can have Jerry get his heat back by cutting a promo on the DVD saying, I have some work to do before I can get my title shot, and drives him to work harder. So we keep that going. There were going to be angles throughout the shows, probably in Montreal, maybe here, where with Strong and Stevens, you might have had Sweet and Sour Inc. try to jump Jerry after the match, and Strong tries to make the save. We did it at the arena at Glory by Honor, where Strong inadvertently made the save for Stevens, and they kind of returned the favors, inadvertently making the saves for each other, but you'd never see them come together and cooperate yet. So that might have taken place at any point after any of these matches. Jimmy Jacobs and Austin Aries, dog collar match, which I believe was the second of their best-of-3 series. Jimmy Jacobs going over in the first. This one, I wanted to keep them even going into the I Quit match. So this one would be Aries had already gone over, even though Jimmy Jacobs won with interference in the first of the 3, Aries had gone over previously. So this one, they're just going to beat the heck out of each other and end up both dead, with Jimmy Jacobs just collapsing on Aries to get the pin. So it wouldn't really be that satisfying of a finish there, but you'd hope that the match itself would be satisfying and sell some DVDs, because it'd be a brutal match, you know? And again, this goes to being the main event of the first half. The old controversial main event of the first half. So there you go, and you keep the Jacobs-Austin Aries thing going with still no definitive winner there. So now one of them has to say, I quit. That's the only way this feud is going to end. One of them is going to say, I quit. All right, so we come back with Go Shiozaki versus Roderick Strong versus Kenny King for the FIP title. This is first match back from intermission. So maybe add a popcorn segment, but otherwise we're just going for a kick-ass second half here. So
the line is long to buy the Guest Booker with Gabe Sapolsky DVD off the table, so
I hope so.
You're going to have to get a slow,
don't download it, buy it.
Start here.
Yes. So this would be your spottier match on the card. I know people. I like the 7 minutes of spots, as Brian Alvarez likes to say. So this is your spottier match. You're putting Kenny King in a match where he's going to look competitive against these two. So even though he's going under to Go Shiozaki, he still looks competitive against these two. And again, the Kenny King push starts beginning of 2009 with the YRR. But you're establishing Kenny King the whole time. And this was something I was hesitant to say, but I will. Is one of my philosophies was I always liked it when the fans got pissed off that a guy was losing, where they'd go, you know what, Gabe has no idea what he's doing. Why is Kenny King losing so much? Gabe sucks. You know, Kenny King should be going over. Once you see that, once they're blaming the booker for a guy not going over, you know that guy's made. Then when he goes over, the fan feels like, oh, Kenny King's going over now because, you know, I supported him, and you get that whole homegrown thing. So
it's how today you have to get a fan passionately involved. Years ago, they were passionately involved because they half-heartedly suspended disbelief and were rooting for the hero or the villain, as it were. But so now, you know, with kayfabe having been removed, you got to have the booker in a way be the bad guy so they can passionately support the. Just an interesting observation, apropos of absolutely nothing. Go back.
Yes. So at this point, I'm hoping people are getting pissed that Kenny King is going under so much. But anyways, then you have the issue with Strong and Go, but there's your spotty match. So then we have Nigel McGuinness against Necro Butcher. I would have kept this non-title. They had a good match in FIP too, a fun little brawl, a match, so I would have had them try to duplicate that. And Necro, who has that awesome victory roll that always gets a pop from the crowd because it's so cool. A guy like Necro is doing a victory roll. He would have gone over with the victory roll. So the reasoning for that is that sets up Necro as a challenger for the world title. I did have in the back of my mind that, you know, it might be a good idea to put the belt on Necro for 4 to 6 weeks, either the ROH belt or the FIP belt if he blew up in that movie. You know, the movie's coming out in December. If he catches on as this cult figure, you know, and suddenly, you know, is in the media or whatever, you know, it's not a bad idea to have the belt on him. So that sets up that possibility. And also, we're already kind of screwing the people on a finish of Jacobs and Aries, even though there's a pinfall, but it's not like a finish. It's just more they're both dead. And in the main event, we're screwing the people on a finish. So we needed a finish here because people don't buy DVDs for non-finishes. You know, there's a lot of controversy now about DQs, and I've done plenty of DQs and countouts and run-ins and all that stuff, and done right and done at the right time, they're effective. But the bottom line is that in the end, people do not buy DVDs. The numbers say that. They don't buy DVDs of non-finishes unless there's something spectacular going on or it's a rare instance or it's done right. I do think that... So anyway, so we wanted to give Necro a... at least in my opinion, that's what it is. So Necro gets a surprise pin here. Should be a big pop. So that brings us to the main event, which in my book should be going on at about 10:10 p.m. So We're not going into a 4-hour show here. That's the other thing. Everyone acts like every show we ever did was 4 to 5 hours, but it wasn't. We had plenty of under 3-hour shows in the last year. And by the way, the DVDs are the under 3-hour show.
You started at 7:30.
Yeah, so we're about
3.5 hours.
Yeah, so we're looking at about 3.5. But the point I was getting to is that our DVDs of shows that are under 3 hours, people buy more of DVDs that are over 3 hours, or around 3 hours.
Let me ask you, because so you're there, okay? People can write whatever they want on the internet and other boards. You're there. Is there crowd burnout?
There is on some shows, but not on all the shows. But there is, I mean, there are definitely crowd burnout. Or it's not so much crowd burnout, it's that the people might have been popping here, but if they had gotten, they're nice, not much happens in the first half, blah, 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 they might still be there, but they might have been there, like, on this level. On a higher level if it wasn't. So that is a valid criticism, But at the same time, I'm thinking DVDs, too.
Right.
So,
do you do anything when you see the burnout? Does this book get changed at all?
No, I mean, I'm very confident at this point after 200 shows or so that even if they're a little tired after Necro and Nigel, they'll still be there for a long main event. And also, you look at it, what do we have going on in the second half? We have, a Go, Roddy, Kenny King match, which is going to be a lot of spots, but not the longest match. I probably would have cut down the match time that I have in there. You have Nigel and Necro, which again is not going to be the longest match in the world. So you're not giving them a lot after intermission, And there's really, besides that, what do you have? You have 8 to 10 minutes of Eric and Delirious. You have, 12 to 15 of Kenny and Tyler. You have 8 minutes of Brian and Eddie. 12 minutes of Davey and Jerry. 15 minutes for Aries and Jacob. So, they should be there for it. But so anyways, Steen and Generico versus the Briscoes. First time this match has happened in over a year, and it will go for the first time in Ring of Honor history. A ROH World Tag Team Title match ends in a 45-minute draw. So you know what? It might have worked. It might not have worked. In the glory days of ROH, which you hear about so much, everything you touch turns to gold. Maybe that Midas touch was wearing off a little bit, so maybe it might not have worked. Maybe it would have. But you know what? I was never afraid to take chances, and you can never be afraid to take chances. So let's let them go for 45 minutes. We don't have a lot of falsies on the show either. Let's just let them ridiculous falsies, so you hope the crowd's with it there, and you hope you're in Toronto where Steen and Generico are super over, Briscoes are healing it up a little bit, so you're hoping with the crowd being that much behind Steen and Generico, it's not like you're throwing two cold teams in there. You're throwing Steen and Generico in their home market, and the Briscoes who were super over last time in Toronto, and so you're hoping that they pull out something there, and I'm sure it would have been good. That 45-minute draw, by the way, would have taken place at the Orlando show, but that got canceled. So anyway, 45-minute draw. So you keep the Briscoes strong as challengers. You have Steen and Generico still haven't beaten the Briscoes because the big storyline at that point was that Steen and Generico have never beaten the Briscoes in a tag title match, a non-gimmick match, and you got the right environment for this kind of match. So let's go for it. And then also at some point you would have Brody Lee destroying people, so keep that going. He would have been booked very similar to Abyss in the Embassy, but I did feel Abyss did a little too much selling in the Embassy, so Brody Lee would have done even less selling, but probably maybe something with Brody Lee and Necro there because we were building that up.
Okay. We move to November 21st to the hotbed of wrestling in the United States, Dayton, Ohio.
Yes, and I want to start things off by apologizing to the people of Dayton because under show considerations, our last show in Dayton in June, in my opinion, sucked. I was not happy with it at all. So I left that show very angry and upset that night. I thought I booked a shitty show. I wasn't happy with some of the execution of things, but mainly, we did that Dusty finish, which I thought would be cute, but it wasn't in the main event. And then we did Aries and Necro, which was another match people were looking forward to. I wasn't happy where that came out. And that was a match people paid to see, and we gave them really a storyline-driven match without a lot of meat and potatoes there. Because again, you get into this whole thing where people are like, well, you got to screw the fans sometimes to build to stuff. Well, you know what? If they're watching a free TV show, that's cool. Here you have people driving 2 hours to Dayton. They deserve something. So I was determined to make it up to the folks at Dayton because Dayton was a very loyal market. It's the first place we went to when we went outside the Northeast. They always show up for us, and we had a crappy show the last time. So And I also had the philosophy, too, that you reward the fans that come, and you make the fans that don't come regret that they didn't come when they read the results, because then hopefully they'll come next time. All right, I had not gotten around to ordering the card yet, because it was about a month away, and there's just no reason to order it yet. So here's the matches I had down. You had Jacobs and Black, who went under in Montreal, against Nigel and Claudio. We had played that up in the newswire. The losing team would face Nigel and Claudio. My opinion, there wasn't any reason for Nigel to have a title match at night, because he had the Bryan match next night. So everyone knew that there's no way the title was going to switch hands in Dayton. He had been building that Bryan match on pay-per-view for a long time. So this or the other big tag match would have been the main event. The other big tag match being Steen and Generico against Bryan Danielson and Austin Aries, who earned their tag title shot in Montreal. But then I would refer back to the Jimmy Jacobs rule of momentarily keep him out of the main event. So this would probably go on before intermission, and then you'd have a very unhappy Bryan and Austin Aries, because they would have a really, really hard weekend ahead of them, because they had huge matches the next night in Chicago, and I always like to balance out guys being in the first half and the second half too. So, I would just beg them, and then they'd go out there and kick ass like they always do. So Nigel, of course, we had the cool babyface thing going in Dayton. I always liked that he was, I was a big mark for the whole Bret Hart Canada United States thing. It's probably the only thing I was a mark for in WWE in a long time. But I always liked that, where you'd have a guy like Nigel who could be a babyface in Dayton, and it made sense. The people in Dayton really had a real attachment to Nigel. But how does this benefit Tyler Black? Because Tyler Black goes over Nigel McGuinness here, probably with the Phoenix, and solidifies his title shot at Final Battle. And Nigel will keep himself babyface afterwards in the Dayton market by being a man about the loss, shaking Black's hand, and telling him to come after the belt. So then Black would cut his mic work. The angle with Tyler Black and Nigel at that point was going to be more based on that kind of respect a little bit. It wasn't going to be your typical pro wrestling, Nigel attacks Tyler Black, blah, blah, blah kind of angle. So it was going to be more, come take the belt if you can kind of thing. So we had that. Roderick Strong against Chris Hero, lights out match. They had a fantastic match last time in Dayton. I felt it saved the show, or was one of the few bright spots on the show, and gave people their money's worth on the last Dayton show. So I was a fan of, coming back to the market. It was good last time. Makes sense. We're not stretching it out. Let's come back with the lights out match, which I was a huge fan of the Chris Hero Pele Primo lights out match in Chicago. I thought it was a perfect match. I love that match. So you come back with it here in Dayton. That was also something I kind of wasn't as good at this year as I was in previous years, which is kind of show-to-show booking in the same market. It might have been tougher this year just because of the way the schedule was, but I remember one year it came out really good. Dayton had a nice little CZW ROH feud that ended with Necro and BJ having the barbed wire match, and Chicago had, the emphasis was on Bryan and Samoa Joe, which ended in the cage match there. Philly, of course, had the CZW feud. So you'd have kind of little storyline arcs in each town. So that's kind of going back to that. All right, so Roderick Strong goes over here, so you're giving him a solid victory because he's been getting beat like crazy lately. And Chris Hero went over in the last one. Nice babyface win for the crowd because, you beat Nigel, who's a babyface there. And there's other heels going over, so nice babyface win there. Possible Albright involvement because he had that good run in the Pele match, so you could play off that. Maybe they do a little brawl because this is the hardcore match on the show, so a little brawl in the crowd. So there you go, nice match there. All right, then we had Six-Man Mayhem: Kenny King, Delirious, Ruckus, Mark Briscoe, Rhett Titus, and Grizzly Redwood. And this is a prime example of what I believe is one of my downfalls, and there's too many people booked on the show, and we had extra people. Let's throw them in a Six-Man Mayhem. Nothing against the guys in the match because they're all really good guys, but it wasn't going to sell one extra ticket or DVD. I mean, maybe people will be like, oh, it's a good match on the DVD, you have it, but the bottom line is we needed Ruckus for what I had planned in Chicago. Delirious you're going to have there. Kenny King, I'll get to in a minute. Mark obviously had to be there, and you got Red and Grizzly, and they're both working really hard, and they deserve a match on the show. But, as an example of too many matches on the show. On my paper right now, I have Mark going over, but I probably would have changed it because you have Kenny King, Delirious, Ruckus, Mark, and Rhett all really need a win there. Grizzly Redwood would not have won a match under my dime, but that's not an insult to Grizzly Redwood. That just would have been his gimmick, as he doesn't win. What's the point of him winning? So this will go... I do want to talk about me and cuts, but I got a little way to get into that a little bit later, so I'll do that. So stay tuned. Then we have Kevin Steen and El Generico against Brian Danielson and Austin Aries. Here's your big tag title main event. Steen and Generico over on Aries. Austin Aries is going heel in the future, so I have no problem jobbing him out as a babyface or put him under. I never like to use the word job out. It was bad that it slipped out of my mouth. Going under, because you're going under. Big deal. But he could go under as a babyface, and this would also end up being the final time that Brian and Aries would be a tag team. So I did want to get this match in while we still could, because I thought it would be a nice DVD seller. So that would be the main event. Then also we had Davey Richards versus Eric Stevens. Going back to that, Davey Richards over with his finish, and then you do some sort of post-match angle with Stevens and Albright and Strong maybe. Again, you pace all that out close to the show. Jerry Lynn against Brian Albright. Winner gets a tag title shot, winner gets a world title shot. Nice baby match. This might have gone to a 15-minute draw, or Jerry Lynn going over, and you'll find out why soon. The Shimmer tag titles would have been on the line against Mischief and Rain. People like the women. Something to switch things up. So you put that on, and Mischief, I think, is a really marketable. She's just really. I think that there's a lot you can do with her. So Mischief, I definitely have plans for it as far as the big push goes. Rain is very good in her role, and it helps Shimmer get the tag titles on an ROH show. Then Jay Briscoe versus Jigsaw, good solid opener, more wrestling oriented, less spot oriented. There's a good opener. You give Jay a win there. So on my books right there, I had Jay and Mark both going over in singles matches, just because they've done a lot of jobs in singles matches. Got to put them over sometime. And of course, Brody Lee would have came down and destroyed someone. Necro Butcher was not in this weekend, so I believe he had a Japan booking. So you just get him over destroying somebody. Also, I did notice, because this was taped a couple of weeks after this weekend took place, that Goshizaki was added to the weekend, but I did not have him on, so I'm doing this all on the assumption he's off. I thought that he had something else to do that weekend.
It's still your show in this fantasy little world.
Yes, it is a fantasy world.
Show. All right, it's pay-per-view time.
Pay-per-view time. Yes, that's a lot of fun. So let me grab my notes here, because this was a huge pay-per-view at that. Show considerations as we enter Chicago on November 22nd. It is a pay-per-view taping. That's a big deal. The Chicago return date is in only 2 months. I hadn't really considered that much at this time, but there's something I'd think of, because 8 weeks out, you got to do something to set up some sort of rematch.
But this would have aired about when? When we would have started its pay-per-view
I think this was
run?
airing either the middle or end of January, I want to say. So
okay.
Hopefully it was
right
airing
around the time that they were coming back.
Yeah, hopefully before. But again, that's where we got into the continuity issues. It was a tough one.
That's tough.
It was a tough one. Eddie Edwards wasn't around this weekend either. I think he's in Europe or something. All right, and Chicago, huge market. Doesn't get any bigger than Chicago. All right, so this pay-per-view, I was going to go with a different pay-per-view format since we had a lot of blow-offs to feuds on this. I was a big fan on the other pay-per-views. If you notice, a lot of our pay-per-views, the first hour would kind of be no ring entrances or one match bleeding into the next match, and then the second hour of the pay-per-views would kind of be here's your ring entrances, and here's your matches without any bleeding or that kind of thing. Those would be your main events. But I was a fan of the one match flowing into the next match or bleeding into the next match, as I said. It was something that we did a lot in FIP, and that was another format that got some criticism, but I really felt that was unjust. It was really the FIP style of doing things. Now, FIP, when I went down to book down there, you go to Ring of Honor, you book that show, everyone coming to that show knows who Nigel is, or Brian is, or anybody on the show. They're all diehard fans. They know these guys from the internet. You go to FIP, you bring that same crew because you're trying to sell DVDs, but the fans don't know who they are. Plus, it's an extremely talented crew. Those are the guys that should be featured now anyways. But the fans, they're not on the internet. They don't know who these guys are. So I was a fan of that style where you'd have match and then the promo and it'd lead into the next match and be all impromptu, because it gave everyone a chance to cut like a nice quick promo, 30-60 second promo. You know who the guy is, and when the match was taking place, you know who the babyface and heel was, and you know why they're in this match, because they'd stayed in a promo. You wouldn't spend a lot of time doing it. It wasn't fancy. And, hey, these are the guys. Here's why they're in the match. Here's why the match is taking place. And here's why you care. And you hope they get that across in a couple of 60-second promos. So the pay-per-views, when you're booking those, you know, there are new fans watching those. So you want to give, you only have 2 hours, and I'm going to go back to making promises to the guys, but, you know, guys have made a commitment to you because you told them they're going to be on pay-per-view. So, you know, they're making that commitment to you, so you make that commitment to them. So I wanted to try to get as many people on the pay-per-view as I can. But again, I didn't want it to suffer from everyone being rushed or a big jumble or that kind of thing. So you let them cut these little 60-second promos after matches, little angles, and gives it a reason. But this one, since there's more blow-offs, is going to go more of a video recapping the feud match format. So it wasn't really going to have that bleeding in, just because we had a lot of stuff we were blowing off. All right, so we have, first of all, the dark match I had in my fantasy world, Samoa Joe versus Chris Hero. Samoa Joe was added because we wanted to sell some tickets, and again, you know, I sensed that we needed something to sell some tickets, so I didn't want to go back to Samoa Joe, but I felt that we had to. I thought we could have a bigger return of Samoa Joe at another point, but you know, we got to do some business at this point. So the philosophy when you add someone like a Samoa Joe or other guest stars like the Motor City Machine Guns is that they pay for themselves. And what I would do is, let's say Samoa Joe costs $100 to have him on the show. So obviously it doesn't. But let's say it costs $100 to have him on the show. I would take the average ticket price. Say the average ticket price is $20. I would always work off $20. Would Samoa Joe draw 5 extra people to the show to pay for his $100? And that was the same thing, like, I remember talking about when I talked to Joe about getting Jushin Liger, because I called up Joe because he was in New Japan at the time, or at the dojo, and I go, hey, can we get Liger? And he goes, Liger's going to cost a lot of money, it's X amount of money. And I go, all right, well, is he going to draw $20 a head, this amount of people? And then Joe goes, yeah. So, you know, that's where it goes. So that was the philosophy there, is that those guys pay for themselves. So I was going to go with Joe versus Hero, because you basically needed a heel to sacrifice for Samoa Joe, and I knew Chris Hero is the man to do that, because he is a guy that understands his role, that keeps his heat, Chris Hero is a hustler, and I mean that in every positive sense of the word. I don't mean he's a hustler in that he's going to take people. He's a hustler in that he works. He knows how to he knows how to play the role, and he's a guy, like, you can always see him getting indie bookings. There's a reason he's always going to Germany or Australia, or he's working every weekend, and that's because he hustles and he does a good job, and he gives you what you're paying for in whatever role you need him in. So Chris Hero at this point would be a good heel foil for Samoa Joe, and he'd be able to leave with heat and leave the match stronger. So, and this was also the one singles match we didn't get in from the CZW feud. So, which it just never happened. So now we're getting it in. So Samoa Joe versus Chris Hero is your dark match, which also means you can do whatever you want on the rest of the card, because you have Samoa Joe going over clean in the main event. So they're going to go home happy. All right, then we had the big Claudio Castagnoli angle. Claudio was suspended for attacking the ref on the last pay-per-view. That's how we rubbed Morishima off the pay-per-view series, was he attacked the ref and was DQ'd, and we said you can't attack the ref on pay-per-views, you're suspended. Did the same thing with Claudio. So the show-long storyline on this one, since we weren't doing the flowing from one match to the other or whatnot, would be Claudio just killing people throughout the show, culminating at the end after the world title match with Nigel and Bryan, where he would lay out Bryan or attack Bryan again. That would lead up into the next pay-per-view. So that would be your show-long storyline. So you could do a lot of stuff with that. It was going to be a real good storyline. Then you had Nigel versus Bryan, building this up since the first pay-per-view, a rematch from the second pay-per-view, and here's where Nigel goes over clean. And this win should put Nigel over the top and define his whole title reign. And now here he is. He's defeated Bryan Danielson clean. So now you've just solidified him. And going into the final battle, even though technically the match hasn't happened yet and the people aren't going to see it, because once again, you get in the whole pay-per-view continuity thing. But technically, he's going into final battle, going into that weekend, stronger than ever. He's put Bryan Danielson behind him. Bryan Danielson, the number one guy in Ring of Honor history. And you can have the heel champ go over clean because you got the Samoa Joe match to send people home happy, and then you go right into the Claudio angle, too, for Bryan. So that sets up the next pay-per-view. Sarah Del Rey versus Mischief for the Shimmer title. This was a dark match, but if we had the time, I definitely would have liked to put it on pay-per-view. Del Rey, a monster at that point, and Mischief, who just... I really like Mischief. And possible title change here with the Shimmer title. That might have been a cool thing to do. So now we go to the Austin Aries Jimmy Jacobs match. The I Quit match. There's been no clean winner or loser, for the most part. They've been pretty even with each other. But now it has to come down to who says I quit. So the finish I was playing around with, which was far from happening, but probably would have. But again, I had a lot of doubts about it. But in the end, I would have said, do you have the guts to do this finish? And then I would have challenged myself and told myself to man up and would have done it. So, anyways, Austin Aries and Jimmy Jacobs. And again, we're trying to keep Aries and Jacobs even for what's going to happen in the future. But Lacey was she was booked and she was going to come out. And she was going to have Jimmy Jacobs say, I quit, because Lacey was going to say, if you love me, you'll quit. So it's kind of a screw job there. We're not really giving the feud a good ending, which I'm not a fan of. One of the reasons that I was really thinking about this, but I thought it was a cool storyline twist. Or Lacey was actually, now I'm remembering, Lacey was going to come out because once again, Jimmy and Aries kill each other. They're bleeding. They're about to die. Lacey hates to see this. She comes out. If one of you really love me, you'll say I quit. Aries doesn't quit. Jacobs quits. The whole little twist there. And then it would have came out in the parking lot. And I don't think I even told Jacobs or Lacey or anybody this. But in the parking lot where Lacey was supposedly taken out, and you saw the video, he pulls out the sword thing. The angle that wrote out Lacey. It was going to be revealed that no, he did not stab Lacey. Instead, he threatened to stab himself and to mutilate himself if Lacey did not leave the wrestling business or did not leave Aries, and Lacey instead chose to leave the wrestling business, so Jacobs wouldn't go around mutilating himself. So might have gotten over, might not, probably wouldn't have gotten over, but it would have been cool in my book. So, and I'm an artist, so I don't care. So, and it would have led to something in the future too. But people would have shit on it, and hopefully they would have stuck with it, and it would have led to something. But again, it might not have happened, and it sounded like in the end they did have a pretty good finish to it. So, whatever. Okay. Then we have Ultimate Endurance on the pay-per-view. First time ever Ultimate Endurance elimination match. Steen and Generico putting the tag titles on the line. The other teams are Delirious and Tyler Black, Ruckus and Jigsaw, and the Phoenix Twins, who I liked a lot. And Ruckus and Jigsaw, very underrated tag team too. Just look at the pay-per-view match I had with Davey and Rocky. I like their stuff a lot. They just got screwed over because the whole purpose of the Vulture Squad was Jack Evans, and then he disappeared, and then Smokes, he came and went, so we just weren't able to get momentum going with the Vulture Squad, so that's unfortunate for Ruckus and Jigsaw. Now you might say to yourself, this looks like another match where too many people are booked on the show, but indeed it is not, because Tyler Black... The purpose here is, since it's Elimination Falls, how does this benefit Tyler Black? Well, Tyler Black wins the first two falls, one with the God's Last Gift and the other with the Phoenix Splash. So you have Tyler Black on pay-per-view, who's lost some pay-per-view matches, but now he just pinned two guys with both of his finishers. So you get that over on pay-per-view. And then Steen and Generico go over on Delirious. So Steen and Generico end up with their hands raised. So hopefully, that puts them over, and it should be an exciting match. All right. Then... there'd be some sort of an angle set up with Steen and Generico and the Briscoes to set that up for the next pay-per-view, because I felt that could be a main event on any pay-per-view in any building in the country. So we'd do some sort of angle there to really start heating things up. Then also on the pay-per-view, we had Briscoes against Brent Albright and Eric Stevens, so we keep the Briscoes' undefeated streak going. Albright and Stevens are coming off a win as a team on pay-per-view, so again, we're kind of dancing with the pay-per-view and DVD continuity there, but Albright and Stevens are coming off a pay-per-view win, so the Briscoes beat them, so it gives them a credible win going into the tag title future match against Dean and Generico in this fantasy land. And the Briscoes remain undefeated on pay-per-view. So you have the Briscoes undefeated on pay-per-view going up against Dean and Generico, Brian and Claudio. So you're setting stuff up. Strong versus Jerry Lynn. There's your good wrestling match opener. Hopefully the way that Delirious and Austin Aries was on the Boston pay-per-view. I really liked that match. And you do some sort of angle with Davey Richards and Roderick Strong at some point. I'm not sure if you do it after the match. You'd have to pace everything out because you already have a potential Briscoes, Dean and Generico angle after the Ultimate Endurance. You have Claudio laying out Brian after that match. So 3 angles after matches might be a little much. But we'd find a way to work it in. That all gets in the detail work that comes closer to the show. We're a month out at this point, over a month out. Then the show, you'd have Davey Richards and a squash. I like the squash matches on pay-per-views. And squash is a demeaning term. I don't like that term because it's a big compliment to be the opponent in the squash match per se. Because here you are with someone like Davey Richards. He's got to look like $1 million in that match. So you got to have faith that the guy that he's in the ring with is going to make him look like $1 million. So it is a very big. You don't want to just throw anybody in that role. It's a very big compliment to be in that role. That guy's job is to make Davey Richards look like a monster, and you want to make sure you have the right guy to do that. So you have Davey looking like a monster on that, and you're setting up a Roderick Strong match on a future pay-per-view too. Now we get into too many guys booked on the show. Kenny King versus Claudio versus Silas, dark match for the DVD. Now, I'll use Kenny King as an example here. And one of my downfalls was that was making cuts. Which making cuts, and there were a lot of cuts made in my final months. But making cuts is not only not easy and not pleasant to do, it's extremely difficult. But the reason why I also think maybe, the reason why the booking change might have needed to be made, and again, I'm not saying it needed to be made, but might have needed to be made, was take someone like Kenny King. All right, here you have him on this weekend, and Kenny King, you'll find out I have big plans for, but as an example, here he's in a 3-way dark match. It really doesn't matter if it's Claudio versus just Silas in a singles. Then in Dayton, you have him in a 6-man mayhem. Doesn't matter if he's in that 6-man mayhem or not. I mean, it's good. You want to put him in front of our fans so they get more familiar with him. They see him doing this stuff and everything. But the bottom line is you're not going to sell any extra DVDs or tickets if this is a 3-way or a 6-man mayhem or whatever. Now, you take a guy like Kenny King, who was a guy that I brought into Ring of Honor and convinced him to make a commitment to Ring of Honor. Now, when a guy is making that commitment to Ring of Honor, he's not making it to get rich. He's making it because he wants to work, he wants to become better, he wants to increase his value. And that's how I would sell guys to make that commitment to Ring of Honor. You'll be more valuable when you leave. Now, Kenny King had already been had been cut from the Edison and Danbury weekend, I believe. And he lost the Florida weekend. So he made this commitment to us, and right away, I'm cutting him from shows. So now it'd be hard to cut him again the following month. Especially, he made that commitment to us and to me, and I made that commitment back to him. Now you bring a new booker in, and nothing against the new booker, but he hasn't made a commitment to anybody. He hasn't made any promises to anybody, so it's easy for him to walk in and do that kind of stuff. Now, looking back, it's never easy to make the cuts, but I probably would have made more cuts because obviously it's me or them. So then you get in that situation. But that was the reason why you would sometimes end up with too many guys on the show or that extra match on the show that you didn't need. Is just I took that commitment that they made very seriously, and I looked at them making that commitment to me. And I will, I'll admit too, and this I'll use Eric Stevens as an example. And Eric, he killed himself in that Roderick Strong feud. He's a guy, he wants to get over, and he'll do what it takes to get over, almost to the point where you have to protect him from himself. But Eric, a great guy too, underrated promo, but it comes to the point too where, let's say Eric, maybe you don't need him this weekend. If at this point you had made a year commitment to him. So again, he made that commitment in order to get better to you. Same thing as Kenny King, you make that commitment to him. But then let's say you say, okay, well, maybe it's time to drop Eric Stevens. Maybe he didn't get over to the point that you hoped he would. Maybe he didn't turn that corner. And again, I hope Eric's not mad at me because I can't say enough good things about him, and everyone out there should book him. He deserves it, and he adds to your show and to your locker room. But if I say, okay, you know what, that's it, Eric, I'm admitting a failure in myself right there, because it's not Eric's fault that he didn't turn that corner to me. It's my fault that I didn't put him in a position to turn that corner or pull the right strings to where he turned that corner. So that was another reason I had a difficult time making cuts. It's because it's admitting my own failure, which looking back, I've learned that lesson now.
But isn't there just talent that for whatever reason doesn't connect?
Yeah, but as booker, you should come up with something so they connect. Like that's how I looked at it, at least.
You can't play handball with a noodle sometimes,
But sometimes you like to think that you can. Right. So, and Eric Stevens isn't a noodle, like he's a.
I didn't mean in his case, but I mean in general. You've got to admit that.
You know what? I wouldn't
form
have
of entertainment.
Okay, I would not have booked that guy in the first place. You see what I'm saying? Like, if there's someone who I thought was playing handball with a noodle, and I thought this guy's a noodle, I would not have booked him in the first place. If I make that if I book someone, and I'm not just talking about booking them for like a show or two or here and there, but you say, Eric, make a commitment to Ring of Honor, I'm making a commitment to you, and you're asking him to make that commitment to you, then you see enough in him to where you believe he'll get over on that point. And I'm not saying Eric didn't get over to that point, because that Roderick Strong feud was something else, and I think there's a lot of upside to Eric Stevens, but it comes to a point where, okay, you know what, we got to cut down to 18 guys a show. Sorry, you're the odd guy out. But for me to do that would be admitting that I failed to put him in a situation to be successful.
Right.
So that was another factor with the cuts. And that goes into too many people on the show. So that's a valid criticism. All right, so there you go. There's Chicago. Huge show. Yay.
Yeah. So we're in December, and we're going down south.
Yes, and these shows have not happened yet, so who knows what's going to happen. But in my fantasy world, this is what would happen. We are in Nashville on December 5th, or St. Louis. I don't know which night's which, to be honest. St. Louis, I think, was the first night. St. Louis and Nashville, December 5th and 6th. Show considerations. This is where we fell into the too many show syndrome, which we had to run that amount of shows, which is another subject for another time. Or not we, they, or however, past tense. But this is an example of it's tough to book something for these shows because you're coming off a pay-per-view taping where you had a bunch of blow-offs, and you're going into Philly and Manhattan for your final huge weekend of the year. And now here you are coming to Nashville and St. Louis. When I was dismissed, neither show was setting the world on fire for ticket sales. You can look on the webpage and see first-time markets, so you're talking about basic shows, basic lineups, and return dates aren't in consideration. So it was a tough weekend to book, and I had just gotten started on it. I knew there would be no major angles shot, but there would be angles furthered. Brought along heading into the final weekend, and the match is basically what I had down. It hadn't even made its way into the lineup part of my book. Instead, it made its way into the talents confirmed for part of my book, which is over here. And the matches I had down to take place that weekend were Nigel McGuinness versus Jerry Lynn. That would be in St. Louis because that would be the blow-off to the Jerry Lynn going after the world title storyline. Could be set up with him going over Albright and Dayton. I thought St. Louis was going to be the stronger market of the two, so it was a good name and a good main event for St. Louis. And Nigel over and Jerry Lynn walks out, which would have been the temporary end of Jerry Lynn's run until early 2009 in the fantasy world that I am living in right now. And then I would have brought Lynn back as either the disgruntled veteran, possibly in Age of the Fall, or probably not, maybe disgruntled veteran. I don't know, but something. I like Jerry Lynn a lot. The other night, you would have had Nigel versus some combination of Albright and Necro Butcher, a possible three-way. Of course, that could be set up if Albright and Lynn went to the draw in Dayton. You could have Carrie, Silk, and the Owner, who I like to use on rare occasion, because I thought it'd make an impact when he would make an announcement if used on a rare basis. So he could say both guys were awarded a title shot. So it'd be some combination of that the other night. Nigel, of course, going over on both nights. Bryan Danielson against Claudio, we'd finally get that in, so that's a good house show grudge match, if you will. Bryan over, and then Claudio getting his heat back afterwards. Necro Butcher versus Jimmy Jacobs would happen on the night that Bryan and Claudio didn't, because that would be your big grudge match on the other night. We had avoided doing the match until this point, too. And put Necro over to build some more momentum. Since Age of the Fall really wasn't about wins and losses at this point. Age of the Fall, we're just about destroying everything. Jimmy Jacobs no longer cared about anything, so he was guiding his bunch of misfits to kill everything while Tyler Black's moving in the positive direction. Austin Aries and Delirious do that rematch off of their pay-per-view. Probably go to a double DQ or something. Keeping Aries even with Age of the Fall. But I wasn't a big fan because we just did the Aries Jimmy Jacobs blow-off, so might not have done that. Put Aries back against Age of the Fall so soon. Mischief, Sarah Del Rey, Shimmer title rematch. Go Shiozaki versus Eric Stevens. That's just another good house show match to get in, and we were heading to a big blow off in FIP. I like the little cross promotion between FIP and ROH, and that would set up the FIP blow off, which was later in the month in December, where Eric in my fantasy world would have gone over and had his proper run as FIP champion, since we had always done the storyline where he would lose in his first defense in Florida the first 2 times. This time he'd get the run he deserved, and earned, by the way. Go Shiozaki versus Roderick Strong match is possible. I was thinking of combinations of Strong and Albright, or Lynn and Strong, or Lynn and Stevens, or Albright and Stevens. Various combinations besides Stevens and Strong. Anything but Stevens and Strong against various Sweet and Tower Inc. teams. And this would, again, be your good house show grudge tag matches to lead up to Steel Cage Warfare at the Hammerstein. I just want to say, there's the other big criticism. I can't believe Gabe booked Steel Cage Warfare 3 months after the first one. Who cares? Where's a book that you can't do that? Both matches made sense. You had 2 big faction feuds like this, so it made sense in both cases. And the final result of both matches would have been completely different. The format of both matches would have been different by the time we got there. I always tried to book. It goes back to like the Kenny Omega versus Tyler Black as match number 2 being a blowaway match. I would like to. Real sports started becoming a big influence on me in the last year. And you might go to a baseball game, and every baseball game doesn't build slowly from the first inning to the 9th. You might go to a baseball game, and in the second inning, 6 runs are scored, and then nothing happens again until the 8th inning or the 9th inning. So that was an example. So again, in sports, there's no rules where this can only happen once. Crazy, incredible things happen in sports all the time, and sometimes consecutively. So therefore, if you're trying to promote pro wrestling or Ring of Honor like it's a real sport, that kind of stuff should happen in Ring of Honor, So that was just a point I wanted to make. And you keep the Bobby Dempsey angle going, and whether Strong or Stevens could coexist on the same team, all that kind of stuff. Tyler Black would win twice and cut 2 more promos, so now you've got some momentum. Maybe do some sort of Nigel Black in-ring angle, stare down or something to go into the title match for the video wire. Davey Richards. How does this benefit Davey Richards? Well, it does because he would go 2-0 whether he was in tag matches or singles matches, going over with his finish each night. And now you're really, really seeing the split in philosophies between Tyler Black and Jimmy Jacobs. They're not teasing like they're going to beat each other up behind their backs or any of that kind of stuff. You're just seeing there's no huge dissension. You're just seeing they're both taking different directions in life, with Jacobs preaching about destroying everything and falling into insanity. Like, I was watching Apocalyptic Now a lot, and he was going to be like the dude in that. And Tyler Black preaching change and positive outlook. Might do the Daisy Hayes Rhett Titus blow off in St. Louis, since that's Hayes' home area. Maybe a mixed tag. Wasn't going to do a singles match between the two, as that would be unrealistic, but perhaps a mixed tag. Briscoes against Kenny King and Sauronaro. It's a good match in FIP, and it'd be a good match in ROH. And if the Nashville advance did not pick up, there is a chance that Survival of the Fittest would have taken place in Nashville, and all that would have been thrown out the window. My secret behind Survival of the Fittest was that it was an excuse to only book 12 guys. Of course, you'd have other matches on it, but you really only needed 12 guys, and of those guys, you didn't need 12 main eventers. You needed 8 to 10, and then you could fill in the rest for first-round matches. So Survival of the Fittest always gave you a cheap show, and Davey Richards would have won Survival of the Fittest this year. So that also would have set him up for a title shot, and that could have played into something. And then we would have done some Jigsaw would have been out there, so we'd have done some angle with him and Kenny King or Sauronaro to start heating up the Vulture Squad YR issue that started with the low blow in Edison. So this is where you get to a difficult part of the job, which is it's like putting together a big puzzle. You got to put everything together in certain spots, and it's very difficult sometimes, and this would have been not an easy weekend to put together, but I'm sure it would have turned out good. So there you go. We get out of Nashville and St. Louis. And now
the big weekend.
Philadelphia, the ECW Arena, and Manhattan. It doesn't get any bigger for me. And again, someone send me some movies or something, because I got to do something that weekend, because I'm going to go crazy not being there. You have to pack each building, the 2 very special buildings, and to show you, maybe this is a sign of mentally I was burned out, as I was already beginning to worry about a snowstorm taking place that weekend. So, you shouldn't really have anxiety if you have a clear head about things like a snowstorm that weekend. And it was something that, I'm not saying I was losing sleep over it, but it did cross my mind pretty much every day, so that might have been part of the stress and everything getting to me a little bit. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it definitely wasn't healthy.
Did you do that every year when you were booking for a winter
no,
show?
but I don't think we ever had anything as big as the ECW Arena and the Hammerstein. So, it was especially big. I'm still waiting for a lot of the talent confirmations, but I did have the main stuff set. I'm going under the assumption that Marufuji and Morishima were in. Wasn't sure about the Kensuke office guys, so I kind of had 2 plans going at that point. Cards were about 90% set. Of course, no match order or pacing or anything at this point. But here's what we were leading up to: Philadelphia, Bryan Danielson versus Morishima blow off. That should pack the building right there. So now I regret not doing it in May, but what do you know? Nigel McGuinness versus Marufuji. That would happen at the ECW Arena because you have Tyler Black, Nigel in Manhattan. Now I know that you're saying, well, you did the Marufuji Nigel angle at the Hammerstein, so the match should be at the Hammerstein. Well, that's true, but at the same time, for Tyler Black winning the world title at Final Battle, it had to happen in New York City, because New York City's where it's at, and the Hammerstein Ballroom packed the house, and that's where, I'm not saying the ECW Arena isn't where it's at, or it should be treated like a house show by any means. You have to go in there with your A-plus game, but, you got to do the title change in New York, especially a title change like that with a guy like Tyler Black, who you're trying to propel into superstardom. So there's no better place to do it than Hammerstein. So we get the Marufuji match in with Nigel. Basically, we got in all the Nigel title defenses at that point, too. Necro Butcher versus Brody Lee, after lots and lots of build, would have been a crazy brawl at the ECW Arena, and that would have been a good market to do it at, because both guys are over in the ECW Arena with other promotions. So you keep that in mind, too. YRR Vulture Squad match, and that's where you'd really start to pull the trigger on the big angle there and start Kenny King's big push. I believe Mike Quackenbush was booked in my fantasy world, which usually was a fantasy to book Mike Quackenbush. Ooh. No, I like Mike Quackenbush a lot, and we always got along great, and I would have loved to push him in Ring of Honor. I really loved his style wrestling. I thought he brought something completely different to the show. Great guy, very professional. It was so hard to get momentum with him and to get him on the shows that you needed to get him on. And that's why he was never pushed more in Ring of Honor. It had nothing to do with his ability or his attitude or anything. I loved having him around. So I was going to go for Quackenbush versus Austin Aries. I was in the books at this point for the Arena. And Aries would have gone over with kind of a controversial finish to kind of tease what would happen the next night, the heel turn. And Aries, we're kind of getting over that he's sliding into insanity. That would all go back to the I Quit match with Lacey and Jacobs. So you have Aries and Jacobs sliding into insanity together. We would have Steen and Generico against the Briscoes at the Arena, where Steen and Generico finally score the win over the Briscoes. But afterwards, the Briscoes go heel and absolutely destroy Steen and Generico. Just a brutal attack on him, and the Arena would have been the building to do that in. You talk about Tyler Black winning the belt in New York, well, the Arena would be the building to have the Briscoes just go crazy, and Steen and Generico are just about the only babyface team that they could turn heel on in that building, but Steen and Generico would definitely get the sympathy there. Then if we had Kensuke and Nakajima, it would have been probably Kensuke versus Eric Stevens and Nakajima versus either Davey Richards or Roderick Strong. And I definitely in Philadelphia would have stayed away from any Sweet and Sour Inc. members versus Albright, Strong, and Stevens. Maybe a singles match or something. But I would have tried my best to stay away from that because we had the Warfare the next night. And in the fun undercard match, Claudio against Grizzly Redwood, with Grizzly trying to chop him down. And I think Claudio needed to have a real match where he could shine in the Arena at that point. All right, so that's how Philly was looking. Again, you're over 2 months away at this point, so there'll probably be some changes, but that's what I had down. So we go to the Hammerstein, which my goal was to sell this building out. Like, I wanted to walk in there. Maybe they still will, but I really wanted to see a sell out there. So
What's capacity there?
I don't know, like 2,500 or something.
Okay.
So I wanted. We had a real good crowd there the first time. The second time was real good, but first time was better. But we had a long layoff. It was like 4 months in between shows in New York. Thought we could do it. So we go in there. Steel Cage Warfare. We have Brent Albright, Eric Stevens, and Roderick Strong. After all those promos said, we might not cooperate with each other, but we'll be on the same team. And a mystery guy against Chris Hero, Go Shiozaki, Larry Sweeney being forced to step into the ring. We just come up with something for that. And a mystery guy. So you have going into this match, will Strong and Stevens cooperate? And okay, so on and so forth. So Bobby Dempsey, here you got his babyface turn as he's the mystery guy on the babyface team. So that should get a huge pop. Set up a spot where he just goes in there and cannonballs everybody and splashes everybody and gives someone his Death Valley driver, which it all looked devastating when Bobby did it. So that probably would have gotten one of the bigger pops of the year. Would have been huge. And you could even, a lot of people would probably be guessing Bobby Dempsey at that point, but you could do some sort of angle in the first half of the show to kind of a swerve angle to where it didn't look like Bobby was going babyface. So there are lots of ways to get into it. Adam Pearce. Hi, Adam. He would have returned as the mystery guy on the heel side. It's funny. I don't know if I should talk about this, but Adam left me like this real awkward message about it's awkward for us to talk and everything. It's not awkward for us to talk. Come on, that's business. I understand. It's cool. So Adam, I was a big fan of his work, and he would have been returning as the mystery guy on the heel side. And we would have had a lot of individual stories pay off in this match. Strong versus Hero would have paid off. Shiozaki versus Stevens would have paid off. Pierce versus Albright, based off their NWA matches, would have paid off. And everyone versus Sweeney would have paid off. Dempsey would not have lasted long, but he would have gotten his stuff in, so it would have been a good little spot for him. Albright would have gotten revenge on Pierce because Pierce went over the last time in the NWA match, but he would have then gotten eliminated. So, he might not have come out of this in the best shape. But I probably had him going part time after this anyways, and he knew that. Then the grand finale would be Strong and Stevens finally forced to save each other in a big emotional scene to fight off Hero, Shiozaki, and Sweeney, and I'll get their payback on them. And then the ending scene, which would have ended the year because of Steel Cage Warfare, would have been the last match on the show, would have been Strong and Stevens hugging and joining forces, and the whole backstory would have been revealed in my fantasy world of Strong bringing Stevens into the wrestling business, and then getting real pissed when Stevens went after his FIP title and winning it, and that's what led to the whole feud. But now they're back to being friends, and as you know, sometimes friendships go through adversity, and then they come out stronger. And don't forget, we had months of build at this point. So I would have liked to have called, it wasn't a definite in my fantasy world, but I would have liked to have called Strong and Stevens the No Remorse Corps and taken that name. Maybe kept Albright in there as the third guy, because Albright still would have been on shows. So we would have been going into closing the year with Strong and Stevens shining at the end of the Hammerstein Ballroom show and forming them as a strong tag team. So that's how the Warfare would have gone. So as you see, if you saw the Philadelphia one, it would have gone completely different than the Philly one. So that's why I believe you can do that. The two matches and they're doing the same. Well, guess what? There's singles matches on every show.
Yeah,
there's tag matches on every show. You can do stuff. So then the big one, Nigel McGuinness versus Tyler Black. Now, some people might say this should be the main event. Well, number one, you're taking an intermission after this match to set up the steel cage. So you're giving people a cool-down period. And I might have just picked my nose on camera, so fast-forward that. You're giving the people a...
Oh, I got fired.
And the other thing is that there's a big angle after this match. I was always hesitant, although we did it several times, to do big angles after main events because everyone gets out of their seat and you lose a whole bunch of people. A lot of people, the majority of the crowd stick around till the last guy's out of the ring, but a lot of times you get a couple hundred people that are just up and out of there. So I wanted to make sure no one was up and out of there after this angle. All right. So we had been setting up the finishing sequence that I described Tyler going over Homicide with earlier, of Tyler using the God's Last Gift, kick out, although he has used as a finish before, so that should be a big pop. And then going right for the Phoenix Splash. So we would establish that again after the, maybe in the Jerry, I don't know. Did we do it in the Jerry Lynn match? Something like that. So finish here, Tyler Black hits the God's Last Gift. Nigel kicks out. Big pop. Black then goes up for the Phoenix. Now, at this point, it should feel like when Austin Aries went up for the 450 and when he won the belt with Samoa Joe, if all goes well. So, hey, this is it. Everyone's sure he's going to hit it. No. Nigel moves and hits a lariat. So it looks like it's over. 1, 2, Black kicks out. They then run and get into some sort of spot, which ends with Nigel going for the Jawbreaker lariat, and Tyler Black catches Nigel in a backslide for the 1, 2, 3. New champion, place explodes. First time the ROH title ever changed hands on something other than a finish. It was a backslide, and that's going to be significant. So that also sets up some rematches with Nigel. And then Nigel proudly hands the belt over to Tyler. He's sad. He leaves. And here comes Jimmy Jacobs. Jacobs comes out. Maybe he wants to set the belt on fire. I don't know. We would have come up with something. It would have been good. But it would have been on those lines where he's demanding the belts. Tyler Black, of course, refuses. Jimmy Jacobs starts to struggle with Tyler over the belt. They're going back and forth. Tyler drops to his knees, clutching the belt. Here's Jimmy Jacobs drawing his spike out, which everyone knows when the spike comes out, someone's going to die. And Austin Aries hits the ring. He and Jimmy Jacobs make eye contact. Now, for months at this point, people have been comparing. They've been alike. They've been sliding into insanity on different paths. Well, here's Austin Aries, comes in, big kick right to the face of Tyler Black, who's on his knees after exchanging a look with Jimmy Jacobs. Brain buster. He and Jacobs have a stare at each other. Aries leaves. So we're not back to the old, hey, look, they're friends now all of a sudden. And we're also doing that with Strong and Stevens in the main event. But instead of Aries attacking Jacobs, he's attacking Tyler Black. And we also would have had Aries cutting promos about the world title during that time. There would have been a lot leading up to it. Very intricate stuff leading into it, which was all in the process of being written. So now you have Tyler Black. For the first time in company history, you have a strong babyface champion. And now he's in a blood feud right away against Jimmy Jacobs and Austin Aries, which you can say Samoa Joe was a strong babyface champion, but he didn't win the belt and then get attacked and laid out and was in a blood feud. So we have a totally different direction going forward into 2009. You can have Lacey involved in this, and she could kind of bring Aries and Jacobs in a sort of an uneasy alliance kind of deal. Again, it'd all make a lot more sense once it was all written out. It'd be very intricate and would have been a lot of fun to do. And then after Aries attacks Tyler, Jacobs can do something to him. So there you go. And that goes back to the Steel Cage Warfare in Philly, where Aries and Jacobs both work together to take out Necro. We would have done more stuff like that, where you go back and you look at it and you go, oh, the connection was made there and that kind of stuff. So we close the year with a bang. But then we have the rest of the show. I would have gone with Steen and Generico against Morishima and Davey Richards at the Hammerstein. Morishima and Davey getting their title shot based off their Tokyo win over the Briscoes. Could have done some angle afterwards to really heat up Sweet and Sour Inc. against Steen and Generico. I like the idea of Steen and Generico in there with Morishima. We hadn't done it. Possible Briscoe involvement in the angle. So now you have Steen and Generico. They're in a big angle with both Sweet and Sour Inc. and the Briscoes hot after them. And you're also setting up possible contenders matches with the Briscoes and Sweet and Sour Inc. So you got a lot of possibilities there too, which, it goes back. You have a lot of shows to fill up. You got 4 shows in January alone, so you got to have a lot of things you can go to. You're dealing with, that's 4 pay-per-views you got to produce in January. And then you also have Nigel on the back burner with him and Claudio in a possible tag title shot. And you have the whole Claudio Generico thing too, which we could always go back to. Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards would have gotten the big push as the main Sweet and Sour team. And they had a fresh match set against the Briscoes and Steen and Generico. I might not have done this because I didn't like the idea of Davey Richards being in there with Steen and Generico, and we were going to go back to it with Eddie Edwards as a partner, and he also wrestled Steen and Generico with Rocky Ramirez as partner in May, so that was a little bit of a red light going off in my head, so that might have caused a change. We had Necro Butcher and Jimmy Jacobs, with Jacobs going over here to start his momentum. Now it's time to start building him back up to the main event title shot, and it continues the Necro feud, and then afterwards you could have Jacobs do something fucked up to Necro to really heat that up. Aries versus Marufuji, which was another match I was saving. Wish I got it in, but it was another match I was saving for this weekend. So there you go. Marufuji goes over because it's Aries' last match as a babyface. I'm sure that's going to be an awesome match. I mean, they don't get any better than those two. Maybe Brody Lee, if you're keeping him around after the Necro blow-off, he was going to have a chance to earn a spot. Maybe him and Delirious against Ruckus and Jigsaw. Mid-card tag there just to we'd see how it's going to get a winner there. It might be a good win for Ruckus and Jigsaw. Briscoes against King and Blade. I just want to get it in even though the Briscoes had turned heel the night before, I just would like to get that match in. They had a good match in FIP. It'd be good there. Something to feature Eddie Edwards as a killer, start his push. Brian and Claudio, that would be a huge match. That's where we did the first angle, which was real hot. Go back and do it at the Hammerstein, although I would be tempted to flip-flop it with the Arena if I felt the Arena was selling enough. I'm talking about Danielson and Morishima, and Danielson and Claudio. Maybe do Danielson and Morishima if I felt we really needed it, and it would draw more, but I like Danielson and Claudio there. Then also another possibility if the Kensuke office was in them against Steen and Generico in New York, if we didn't want to go on the Davey Richards against Steen and Generico there, to hold off on that a little bit. So all that would have came together. You see how things work from here. We are 2.5 weeks out from Montreal and Toronto, and you see how you had the match order and more detailed stuff, and now here we are, a few months down the line where you can see the matches that are in the books. And obviously the major angles are in place, but it's not all pieced together and fitted together yet.
Let's talk about 2009 without specifics, without talking about specific cards like this. I want you to talk about talent, and I want you to talk about where you see them going. There's a spot in your book here, I think, for booking long-term too, right?
Yes, the very secretive talent list where everyone will probably get insulted now, but order is not important here. It's a little bit important, but just because you're at the bottom doesn't mean you're at the bottom. So
what are the 3 columns?
We got your babyface side, your tweener / baby heel kind of side, but more versatile, and your heel side. These guys are definitely the baby faces. I can't really fill the tweener role. These guys are definitely the heels. Gotcha. This is gives you a little leeway of which way you want to go to it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this is the primary talent roster right here. Okay. Then I would refer to the second page when we need to fill in guys. Here's the guys that you can come in, give an immediate push to, ready to go, not necessarily on every show or whatnot. This is a good column. All these columns are good to be in. This is your next column you go to, and then you go to this column when you're looking to fill in guys.
Okay.
So
let's see what we got.
So, and order, again, is not important, and a lot of times I just randomly write guys down. Just so happened that a few days before the nuclear disaster came, which left everything at a standstill, I had done my 2009 lineup pages, because you'd always do your rosters, though, a few months before those rosters actually took place, so you knew what you were building to. So this is what I was looking for going into Final Battle and after Final Battle.
Okay.
So here's what we had going in 2009 in this fantasy world. Tyler Black, first time he had a strong babyface world champion. Part of the crowd would turn on him because they always turn on the babyface, but unlike Nigel, we would have completely ignored it and let them do whatever and kept pushing them. You have challengers include Jimmy Jacobs and Austin Aries in a feud, so you can have your regular world title matches work into gimmick matches, so you got a few matches there. You have Tyler Black never defeating Austin Aries, and I think it was 3 singles matches at that point. Nigel rematch, since it was a backslide. Could also do Nigel in a 2 out of 3 falls match if there's a big clamoring to see it again. Brian Danielson is set up since Tyler Black is 0-3 against him. All the members of Sweet and Sour Inc., particularly Davey Richards, who obviously we were giving a big push to. Kenta, going back to Toronto, here's that Kenny Omega match. You can build him up for a big match. So you work that in. So there's on top. Then Steen and Generico, babyface tag champ. So this past year was kind of the year for a heel, maybe too strong, but 2009 we're going babyface direction. Steen and Generico, they got Sweet and Sour Inc. right hot on their heels, and some gimmick matches against the heel Briscoes coming up. And if you're really desperate to sell tickets, you break your word and do another ladder war, which I was not a fan of doing, even though those 4 are crazy enough to want to do another one, because I just thought it was unfair to ask them to top what they did in the first one. And I also thought if you just do one, it'll go down as more legendary as one of those cases. But I also just felt it was unfair to ask them to top that, and there's no way they could. They probably could, but it would be tough. So you have that set up. Then you have Strong and Stevens you can start building up. In my fantasy world, Ishimori would have been the guest star from Noah, the way that Go Shiozaki was this past year, and Kenta was, and Morishima was in previous years. Kenta looked like in the fantasy world was heading back, so you have Kenta and Ishimori as a tag team, which would have been awesome against Steen and Generico. Jigsaw and Ruckus, of course, you can build them up, and Kenny King and Jason Blade, you can build them up into a shot. The Phoenix Twins get over, which I like them a lot. You got them, Cheech and Cloudy. So you got a good amount of challengers set up, and it's tough to do longer than a 6-month tag title reign just because you blow through all the teams, but you got a lot set up right there. We have Roderick and Eric Stevens. You use them 50-50 as a singles in the tag team. One thing, I guess whatever. You got them as a tag team there. Half as a tag team, half as singles. I think the latter part of the year, you work them into a big feud against the Briscoes, like talking about the summer and after. And you can build to a possible tag title shot there. You can feud them with Age of the Fall. You can also have them each challenge Tyler Black once, if you get them a little momentum as singles wrestlers. And Eric Stevens would have gotten a nice, solid FIP title run. Necro Butcher, Age of the Fall feud, and possible title reign if he blows up with the movies, with either the ROH or FIP belt. Ruckus and Jigsaw would be in the big feud with the YRR, which the whole purpose of that feud would be to establish Kenny King. And then I was hoping, I'll get to Kenny King in a minute. Daisy Hayes, revenge on Rhett Titus, if not done in St. Louis. We'd get to that right away earlier in the year. And then the whole heavy trying to save Delirious' soul storyline from Age of the Fall. Bryan Danielson, blow off to the Claudio feud. And you would have to have the final match on pay-per-view after the Angle. And then you'd have matches with Kenny Omega. Davey Richards, we never did get in Davey versus Bryan. I was saving that one, so you got that now. That would probably be a real good win for Davey going into a title match with Tyler later in the year. Eddie Edwards, I would hope for something there. Kenta Ishimori. And then you still have Age of the Fall and Sweet and Sour Inc. You haven't even touched them with Bryan. And there was a angle we had talked about doing with a former WWE guy, which I won't say the name of the guy in case they go back to it. Briscoes, here they are heels. You got Steen and Generico gimmick matches. You got Strong and Stevens, and as a possible big feud down the line, and a heel title run possibly for the latter half of the year. Nigel McGuinness, you got possible 2 world title matches with Black, a regular rematch, 2 out of 3 falls, and then from there you could maybe have him turn down Sweet and Sour Inc. and go a strong baby face against them, or a possible depression storyline. Really, I thought his run would be over when his world title run was over. It would have been time for him to really go make some of the big bucks, and I really hope he does. If there's no one that deserves it more than Nigel, so which is saying a lot because everyone on this roster deserves it. Austin Aries would have gotten the biggest push of his ROH career as a heel, as the top heel. We would have really brought out the dickhead and smartass side of Austin Aries, really pushed it to the moon. He thinks he's smarter than everybody. That would have completely came across. And this is where we get into the big push, which I was big on, or the big debate, the scarves versus boas debate, where I would not want to have gone into a boa direction, because to me boa was cliched pro wrestling old school. Now you look at like the Jonas Brothers, they're wearing scarves, you want to slap them in the face. Scarves are the new boas, so I was trying to go in that kind of direction, kind of modernize the whole boa thing, or scarf thing, whatever, but the whole style of dress. The Miz has it down really well. In WWE, The Miz and Morrison. Then we got Jacobs, Delirious, possibly Brody Lee if he gets over, and Mischief, and they're just about fucking shit up, destroying everything. And then you could have Aries and Jacobs, a little bit of an uneasy alliance against Tyler Black, possible tag team, maybe have them challenge for the belts, maybe win the belts. Sweet and Sour Inc., Sweeney, Hero, Davey, Eddie, Hagedorn, and Del Rey. Sweeney, you got a great guy to center everything on there, and Hagedorn is just. I think I could have done more with him. I think that he has a real good chance of getting over as a heel. But you got them possible feuds with Danielson, Nigel, and a major thing. Their big thing at the moment would be challenging Steen and Generico for the tag titles. Kenny King, you start him out as a heel, establish him with the tag team with Jason Blade, and you would add Chase and Rance and Sour Naro. Chase and Rance, first of all, has the charisma to make this gimmick work. Sour Naro, in my opinion, is the most underrated guy in the Indies. someone give him more bookings, please, more of an opportunity. But the main emphasis would have been on Kenny King here, and then after about 4 to 6 months, turn him babyface, let him go over the other YRR members, and then I think second half of the year of 2009, Kenny King would have been one of the top babyfaces for Ring of Honor, and I think he would have gone over huge. Then I want to mention SoCal Val here too, because she was with the YRR down in Florida before she got pulled, or she moved, I think. But she is a superstar, and like unfortunately she never got the push or the to become that superstar. And I felt that the more that you pushed and featured her, the more she would grow into that role. And I would have brought the YRR into Ring of Honor a lot sooner if SoCal Val was available to come in with them, because she was a star, and she would have risen to that star level. Hopefully she still does. Claudio was to be determined after the Danielson feud. I was going to see how that went. Prince Nana storyline of him being broke, that would have been really good, because in this fantasy world, Larry Sweeney would have given him basically the Bobby Dempsey role, would have said, hey, you're down on your luck, you got nothing going for you, come be the lackey, Sweet and Sour Inc. But the whole time, the Prince is scheming his way back into power, because that's what he does. And then we would have had a big turn. Not sure who would have ended up the babyface. We would have felt it. But in the summer, we would have gone with the flow, and either Sweeney or Nana would have turned babyface, and then they would have feuded with each other. So you'd have a whole who's signing who kind of thing. I'm signing your guy, you're signing my guy, who's turning who. And, I think that Prince Nana and Larry Sweeney could be built up into like a really big match. But again, that would have been a really, really slow burn. So I'm already looking to the second half of 2009 a little. So then on the secondary roster page, you have Kenta Nishimori. One more needs to be said there. Freshen up both the tag and the singles division. Kenny Omega coming in with a big push full time. And then you have a rotation with Jerry Lynn, Brent Albright, Adam Pearce, Stevie Richards, although I haven't talked to Richards yet, but I wanted to get him in. So you would have a rotation going with them, depending on what the show needed. And, of course, since all these notes were written, Paul London was released, he obviously dramatically changes the landscape of anything. And, I was hopeful for some guest appearances by Ibushi and Nakajima and Pac, who I thought looked great on the Drag Gate show. I was fortunate enough to attend in September. Rocky Romero and Jack Evans returns were always possible. And, Rhett Titus, I think that he was ready to be pushed to the next level. And I always tried to get RVD, but I never could. And I would have marked out for booking Sabu. I'm still a Sabu mark. You had to be there in 1994 to really appreciate Sabu, and I was lucky enough to be there. So there, you're not limited to those names or anything. There's many, many other names in the book here. But, Lacey, she's such a great performer. You bring her in at any point. And Silas Young has potential. Awesome Wonderland's got potential. TJ Perkins I always liked. I thought Daniel Puder, if we had TV, Daniel Puder would have been tailor-made for what I want to do on TV. Dave Taylor, I would have liked to have given him. Chris Jones was looking good in FIP. Robert Anthony, I thought had some potential. Trick Davis, Joey Matthews, I was always open to bringing back. Hollow Wicked. Bobby Fish, Damian Wayne, Rick Sterling. The list goes on, and I'm inevitably going to leave some people out, so...
Okay. You booked for 6.5 years in one place. That says a lot.
Thank you.
By anybody's standards. I don't think anyone would take that away from you, even the people who love you on those boards. You've got to hand it to someone who can stay employed in that position. So let me ask you a general booking question. You're doing this for 6 years. You're cranking out this much material. We brought up the burnout issue. Whether you think you were or you weren't, why do you book? Who are you booking for? What's the inspiration? Why do you get up every day and continue to do it, even on days where you feel that you don't want to?
Well, there really was never a day that I didn't feel like I didn't want to do this. I always appreciated the job and lived in the moment. I'm not trying to sound like a Hardy, but I appreciated every moment that I was able to do this job, and it was a great job. And it did get tough to sit there and watch the footage over and over again, and then you sit there and you say to yourself, your job is to sit there and watch footage, what are you bitching about? So, but I always appreciated it. But in my book, there's 4 things that you book for, or 4 different aspects that you book for, whether one's greater than the other is up to debate, but number one, and I'm not saying this is number one, these could be 4 equal parts, but the owner of the company, Carrie Silken, in this case, he's the one giving everyone jobs, and he's the one putting his money on the line and putting his trust in me with his money, and he's giving you a great deal of responsibility with it. And Carrie Silken, and that's another reason why I can't be bitter right now, is that Carrie Silken gave me his 100% trust and let me put this together the way that I wanted to, and the way that I saw fit. And that's something that, there was 204 live shows I did and 202 show DVDs, and there were other DVDs and everything, and Carrie gave me that opportunity and went through, a lot personally and professionally to make it happen. I don't think people realize personally how much he put into when he didn't have to. And no one will ever realize that. And he made a great deal of sacrifices, and he put that trust in me. Yeah. So it was my job to be responsible with his money. Maybe I didn't make the cuts that needed to be made, but I covered why, But I always took that responsibility very seriously, very seriously. And I always appreciated what Carrie did, because he gave me an opportunity of a lifetime. How many people out there can say they booked 204 live shows, without having to be in a committee or answer to so-and-so or run the show by him or whatever, And Carrie gave me that opportunity, and I'll be forever grateful. And that's why right now, there's no way I can be bitter or mad or angry at him or anything. I understand why things happened. The fans. And, it's cliche. You always hear everyone go, oh, the fans are great. I do it for the fans, And it always comes out like such bullshit. But I'll tell you what I always took very seriously. And, for instance, I went to go see a movie 10 years ago, let's say, and I paid, my $20 or whatever, and you're sitting there and the movie sucks, and you leave the movie and you go, I just wasted my one night off. I drove here, I spent this money, and this sucked. And I never wanted anybody leaving our shows with that feeling. And I always took it very seriously when it comes to the fans, that they're driving to your show. A lot of fans travel. To me, there was no bigger compliment than when someone said, "Hey, I flew from England for the show," or "I flew to so and so," or "Hey, I just drove 5 hours to see the show." I mean, those people are driving 10 hours round trip or 6 hours round trip and spending their money, spending their day off, spending their leisure time, and you have to give them their money's worth. You have to make it worth their while, and it's always a huge compliment that they're willing to do that for you. They could go on the message board and say this sucked and this sucked and this sucked, but the bottom line is, did you come to our live show? Did you have a good time? Did you buy a DVD? Is it a DVD that you'll want to watch again? I didn't want people to just watch one of our DVDs once and then be like, oh, I watched it, cool. I wanted it to be something that they would get their money's worth out of, because it meant a great deal to me that they were spending their money on us. And again, that sounds cliche, but I never, every show I would wake up, and I'm not saying it's the first thing I would think of when I woke up, but I would think to myself, hey, there's a kid who's been looking forward to this show for 3 months, and he's coming to it, the way that I would. You'd buy your, wrestling would come to town, you buy your ticket and just look forward to the show, and there's someone that's doing that, and there's someone that this is their first show. And you gotta make your reputation to them, or there's someone that said convince their friends to spend $20 a piece and put themselves on the line, and if it's not something their friends enjoy, they're gonna be, I spent $20 on this. You're an asshole, and you don't want to do that. So I took it very seriously, and it really was something I thought of often. The wrestlers, especially on the Ring of Honor level, no one's getting rich. They're making a commitment to you. They're putting their bodies on the line to you. They're doing this in hopes that you'll give them a chance to succeed, that you'll put them in a spot where they can succeed, and they're putting their careers in your hands, basically. I mean, I'm not saying like you're God and you control everyone's careers. That's not the case, but they are making that commitment to you, and on a Ring of Honor level, they're doing it so that they'll come out worth more money, they're doing it so that they'll increase their reputation. They're doing it because they are artists on this level, and they want to showcase that art, and they're putting that faith that you'll put them in the spot where they'll be able to do that. So, you always have to appreciate the fact that, Vince can tell everyone to fuck off after a few years because he's putting a lot of money, they should be leaving with 6 figures in the bank when they're leaving with them. But with us, they're doing it so that they'll grow and develop, or else they'll be able to wrestle the way they want to wrestle, or, be able to show off their creative side the way that they want to, which Ring of Honor offered that opportunity. So I always took that seriously. And there's yourself. I always booked for myself, too, because it sounds corny, but I always did consider myself an artist. I didn't consider myself, I'm sitting here, churning out wrestling, or, I never had a desire to work in WWE, and I still don't. I mean, and I don't think it'll ever happen. It's not something I'm going to pursue. If they called me up one day, which isn't going to happen, and offered a lot of money, I'd do it. But it's not something I never wanted to be in that atmosphere. I wanted to be in this atmosphere where I could promote and write and book the product that I could be proud of myself, and that would fill me, creative wise, and it was an art for me, and it still is. But that's how I did it. So that's who you're booking for.
Well, you've had roughly 6 weeks, 5 weeks, wherever we are, to think about those 4 elements: yourself, the wrestlers you work with, the fans who buy the product, Carrie Silkin. Considering all of that and everything you've probably thought of every day, and every question you've had to answer from people every day, if Carrie called you today and said, why don't you come by? What would you do?
I would probably. It goes back to being honest. I made mistakes, and now I realize what those mistakes were. And the point is, the fact is that if we had to go down to, and again, maybe 18 guys a show works, I'd have to honestly look at the roster and go, okay, who's in the same spot they were last year, just as over as they were last year, and even if it is my failure, you have to cut them, and I'd have to make those cuts. I would probably cut half the guys on that roster sheet that you just saw, because things need to be shaken up. I'm sitting there myself, telling Carrie in September and August things need to be shaken up. So I would have cut all those guys, would have pushed Tyler and Kenny Omega and Kenny King as the hot new guys, would have kept, the core guys, the Briscoes, Brian, Aries, Roddy. I'm not going to name any names past that, because then it's going to get into who was cut and who wasn't cut. I'm never going to reveal that. But then I would have brought in Paul London, Loki, Teddy Hart, and Super Crazy, and really shook things up. So you would have had 18 people. You would have had 10 guys already on the core roster. You would have had Tyler, Kenny, and Kenny Omega as the big new talent, and then you would have had these 4 guys come in and really shake things up, which would have been an interesting locker room, but hey, would have gotten people's attention.
Well, in one way or another, you worked in professional wrestling for the last 14 years, was it?
14 years, yep.
What are you going to do? What do you want to do now?
I have no idea. So, right now, I'm just going step by step. There's a lot of stuff in my personal life I neglected for Ring of Honor, and I'm not saying that as, hey, look what I did for Ring of Honor, but it's a fact. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to rebuild some of those relationships. I was 224 pounds 6 months ago. I was 207 before Thanksgiving. I got up to 209 before I left today. So, I'm trying to get myself healthy. And, unfortunately, I did not become a rich man, so I got to think about what I'm going to do next. But if you look at the big picture, it's too much to look at. So I'm just going day by day and step by step at this point. It's really like, in baseball, a team's down 3-1, and they say, you can't think about having to win 3 straight. You go pitch by pitch. And I'm going pitch by pitch at this point. So I don't know.
Well, I want to tell you something, Gabe. That we do a lot of different shows, and we work with people who rode the WCW gravy train when they were paying however many $1 million a year, and it was easy to deal with some of the bullshit because of those paychecks. But are you a millionaire right now? No. Okay. Did you get a call in the last 5 weeks from Jeff Jarrett?
No.
Vince McMahon?
No.
Okay. So it boils down to the fact that you did this because it's your passion, and that's awesome from a wrestling fan's perspective to see someone participating for those reasons. And so I thank you for that, and I know a lot of other people would also. And as a business owner, you could have done this with anybody, and some you couldn't, and some you wouldn't, but us you did. So I thank you for that too.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I was really glad to be able to say all this and get it out, and it's been a fantastic 14 years. If this is the last thing I do in wrestling, which there is a strong possibility is the last thing I do in wrestling, I wouldn't trade. It's been such an unbelievable 14 years, and thank you to everybody who made it possible, and that's everyone's buying this DVD, anybody who attended a Ring of Honor show or ECW show or anything, and I'm not going to get into my personal stuff, but all those people too. But thank you.
All right.